And how's it going, everybody? It is time for your weekly dose of junior mining talks with Luke ten Hav, aka the closest thing you'd find to the Flying Dutchman today, and yours truly, your favorite ginger talking head on the internet, or at least in the mining space, I hope. This is going to be a packed episode, though, potentially one where we'll get into a bit of a discussion, maybe some disagreement by the looks of the material you've just sent me, Luke. But we'll talk about Luke's process of judging companies, I suppose, when they first cross his radar or his desk. Then we're going to talk about to Bernie Kreft. He's an explorationist, a placer mining, an amateur geo, an ex-TV star, a project generator, prospect generator, potentially a bunch of other things as well at the same time. I'm not going to go through the full list. I'm not quite sure yet what we'll be talking about, but a better understanding of the risks currently facing the Yukon and the BC is likely to be a part of it, I'm hoping. And then, Luke, I understand you'll probably have to run after that. But after our conversation with Bernie, I am going to be sticking around for a while longer, probably about an hour or so, to talk to Chad Peters of Ridgeline Minerals. Not about his company this time, but about his upbringing, about his joys and fears and tears and whatever else might be, and about his life as a whole. So I'm hoping we'll dig deeper than what he typically gives off. But he's a young CEO with an interesting background. So this is going to be a new segment of the weekly show. At least I'm going to try and make it a weekly thing where I'm going kind of in depth on the CEO instead of on the company. Excavating executives, I think, is what I'm going to be calling it. If you get my lingo here, obviously highly intelligent jokes are always going to be part of this one, as you could expect from a talking gingerhead. But as always, disclaimers and confessions are in order here as well. A few things, really. First of all, there is a disclaimer on your screen right now. There will be others in a minute, but also throughout the interview, there's going to be disclaimers on your interview. I suppose technically you're obligated to read them, but you really are better off actually reading and understanding them, because first of all, everyone you're going to see in here will be biased in one way or another. I, for example, am going to be biased on some of the companies that we're going to be talking about here by the looks of this list, because I own some of them. I will be biased in my conversation with Chad Peters, because his company, Ridgeline Minerals, is a paying advertiser on this channel. So I'm not to be considered unbiased here at all. Nobody really here is. Nobody out there ever really is. And the second thing you need to understand, though, is that we are discussing incredibly risky stuff in here. They're non-revenue generating companies. They rely on the public markets for financings and whatnot. And failure is not only the norm, but it should be the expectation in this space. And this should be approached with extreme caution and a mega grain of Himalaya salt. For the odd ones among you who don't like losing money, that is. So there will be no invitations for you to take any sorts of actions in here. There will be no recommendations made. There will be only biased opinions and general and impersonal conversations between individuals who sadly do not possess superior powers and unfortunately cannot predict the future. Can you believe that? So no guarantees are going to be made in here, besides that there will be forward-looking statements in these conversations. Be aware of that. Be aware of the inherent risk to investing, the increased risk of investing in non-revenue generating companies that operate in the harsh reality of the mining industry. Be aware of all the baked-in biases, and please talk to someone who's proven to know what they're doing and talking about, like a professional investment advisor. None of us in this video are going to be one of those, so you cannot talk to us about it. You actually have to find someone who's licensed. We are not. As well as just do more research. Don't take rash decisions. You're going to be sorry that if you do. Go to setdarplus.ca, setdarplus.ca, where you're going to find the company's official filings. Read them, breathe them, bake them, eat them, do whatever you want with them, but do more research. If you don't do that, you're highly likely to lose your money. The disclaimers on your screen right now. If you don't enjoy losing money, read them. Be careful out there. That's it. That's all. I'm going to stop. Shut up now. And I know it was a lot. I get it, but it's better off everyone knows it. Even if they do know, it's better off everyone's reminded of it each time they come on this channel. But with that out of the way, Luke, I am looking at a picture. Because I'm looking at the mover, there's not much to talk about there, apparently, or what it looks like. You might touch upon something if you want. But after that, I'm looking at a picture of what seems to be a matrix of some sorts, potentially made to infuriate me or at least annoy me. but we have about 30 or so minutes before Bernie's here, so I'm going to shut up now. Talk to me. What do you want to talk about this week? What's happening?
Well, the big thing this week is Osisko Mining. They were taken over for a big premium by Goldfields. And um, I mean, these deals are very interesting because the best projects are still the best projects and that they are getting taken over. And sometimes it takes many, many years, like with Osisko Mining. And of course, everybody right now talks about it and tweets about it. I wonder how many people really own it because these things take a long time. But still, one of the, let's just call them tier one projects, one less available for the majors. Recently, Reunion was taken over. There's a couple of them left, like Rupert and others. Maybe we can invite someone to discuss those 10 names because I think there's less than 10 companies left with that profile. But other than Osisko, there were no high profile deals, I think, this week. And we typically look at these very small juniors, these 5 million, 10 million obscure juniors.
Well, when you look at them, there's something wrong with my brain. So I've concluded that. So my mom literally had me tested as a kid. I had a lot of headaches. She literally did. I'm not even kidding. And doctor said there's nothing wrong with my brain. Now I think there is something wrong with my brain because I'm generally way more attracted to a lower market cap than I am to a higher market cap. Like, and you have it on here on another list as well that we're going to discuss. But Lavraz Gold, I understand that it's a quality discovery and all these things. I see the insider buying. I hear the thesis. I spoke to them in Switzerland a couple of months ago. I just don't I would be way more attracted to something like SQR that just dropped to like 3 million market cap, even though it's kind of a mess right now too, right? They have that biological refuge thing and the market cap is low and they might need money. Well, they are going to need money later on this year. So it's kind of a mess, whereas Lavras is kind of figured out, if you will, as a business. But I still see myself being more attracted to the lower quality, cheaper stuff. So I think there's something wrong with my brain. Have you dealt with, did you used to think that way as well when you first started out? Like, how do you deal with that?
Well, in a way, I still think like that. But I think you also have to realize, like, what are you looking for? Are you looking for, well, everybody's taking a lot of risk in this business. So not everybody's looking for a 10 bagger, I think, especially the bigger funds need to make a return, try to make a return, and are not looking necessarily for the highest risk 20 bagger potential type ideas. So I still look at these small juniors because they are sometimes, just because they are 5 cents, they have the odds of going to 15 cents because at some point these companies always get a spike when something happens, a news release or an area play or something happens in their sort of story. But of course, if you put it, I thought about today, like, what is my checklist? I don't really have a checklist physically that I'm checking, 10 different points, but in my head, I'm doing it all the time. And I wrote them down here. And I think these are the key things I look for. And I can just very quickly say, no, not this one. No, not this one. So what is the difference between a Lavras or one of those type of companies versus an SRQ? And of course, there's already, if you're paying $50 million market cap for a company, there must be something already proven up. If there's not something already proven up, then 50 million is quite a bit. And it could be already a deposit or maybe a discovery or maybe an amazing location next to a big mine. And you think, well, this big mine they need this project. Otherwise it's too close. I mean, it could be several reasons, but SRQ, for example, or San Lorenzo, they don't have anything that really puts a sort of value below there. A real value in the company. So it's real potential. And if you look at potential, you can almost always give them a high score because every company sort of comes with a story like, hey, we have this and this is still unknown and we are going to discover it. So the potential is always very, very high and always sounds good. At least very often it sounds good. So I think if you have a Lavras, if it would just be a good land package with potential, $100 million would be way too much. But I think Lavras still offers 10 bagger potential. To come back to my earlier point, I think it still offers 10 bagger potential. And a $5 million company that has 50 million shares out, issues another 30 million and 30 million warrants, very quickly, lowers that potential of becoming a 10, 20 bagger, even though you still see 5 million market cap on the screen. I don't think 5 million is really realistic at that point because there's so many warrants. The moment they find something that brings them to 10 million, it sort of caps them already. And that's why I think often you make a mistake. People make a mistake in their head by thinking 5 million is not a lot, 50 million is a lot. And if in the case of Lavras, there's no warrant outstanding at all. So what the value is the real value. So I think there's several things you have to consider. A $5 million story is not necessarily an easier 10 bagger than a 50 million story, in my opinion.
But 10x on Lavras is a big claim, though. 125 million market cap right now. So for it to 10x without dilution, it would be $1.2 billion deposit. And you incorporate for some dilution, whatever you want to do. There's going to be some dilution before it gets there. I mean, it's not going to go there overnight. So it's over $1.5 billion. How do you even conceive of that idea in your head? Like, how can you even maybe I don't know. Maybe I don't dream big enough, or like, but how are you coming to that conclusion that it's a 10x at this high of a market cap?
Well, I'm saying 10x potential, and of course, potential. Everybody could say potential. They already have a discovery, and they have a pretty substantial discovery. And if you look at we discussed this in much detail a couple of months ago, probably 1.5 months ago. They have one big deposit right now, likely a deposit, not proven up yet. They have 1 million ounces. They may already have 2 or 2.5 million ounces if they would do a resource right now. But they have so many targets. They have drilled 40 grams over 4 meters, just a kilometer away from that. So it's very well. It's not unlikely to think that they make more discoveries: 1 deposit, 2 deposits, 3 deposits. I mean, then in that case, they would be an Osisko mining type company, or maybe a Reunion type company, or a Newfound Gold type company, and then you can think of $1 billion or $1.5 billion. Is it more likely that Lavras becomes that sort of profile, that they make such a discovery, or more discoveries, or is it more likely that let's just say GPM or SRQ makes a discovery within now and a year? Because then, of course, if it's a big discovery, it could be 100 bagger, 50 bagger. But if it takes them another 2 or 3 years and they issue another 150 million shares and warrants, they will roll back, and you probably need a 10 bagger to even not lose money on the thing. So I think becoming a 10 bagger in those smaller names is really a matter of you need a short time frame. If it doesn't happen within 2 or 3 years, those companies often have issued so many shares that they roll back, and everybody before the rollback, can almost not make a profit anymore. And that's why I think that miscalculation is often done in those smaller names.
That's a good point, because then you also have Orion on here, because Dave Lotan, a mutual friend of ours, he watches the share registry as a hawk. I don't know anyone who watches share registries as he does. He even got over 130 million shares on Orion, which I think initially, if you had spoken to him, maybe he would have thought it's never going to go over 100 million. So you make a good point that you should think about dilution, and that's not with Orion. It's not horrible dilution. But still, they were, what, $1.50 in 2021 or $1.30, something along those lines?
And they had 40 million shares out. I think that if you would take any given company on a TSX fee and doing the work they did, they would likely have been at 300 or 400 million shares by now. So, that then team comes in, and not just geology team, but promotion team and corporate strategy team, like doing the financing at the right time, having the connections to do it with the right people. So I gave them the scores are, of course, you can debate about the scores, and we could do that, but I give them a 70, because it's I don't think it's no longer like 70% with 5 or 10 people. I mean, when you get bigger, also that becomes more difficult, and maybe you don't even want that anymore. So from a point of view that there's very little, it's just a couple of big players, and that's it. I don't think that's the case anymore with Orion. They still have I think a good structure compared to companies like them. In the case of Sunpeak, I give them a 90, because that company sort of did nothing for 3 years, didn't do any dilution, and everybody was still there after. I mean, they listed in 2020. Within half a year, a war broke out, and there was no more financing. So everybody who still owns it from 5 years ago, or in the meantime bought it for this opportunity. So there's no reason to sell. I think those shares are so stuck with a number of people that I give them a 90 right now. But it also gives you very low liquidity. So it trades by appointment almost, and you may not like it. I do like it. That's why I give it a high score, because just a bit of news, good news, could bring it up, and a bit of bad news, of course. Like recently, the news wasn't appreciated that much, and then you see it go down 50%. But I like that share structure personally, and that's why I gave it a 90.
Well, it's so, but well, with potential or with valuation, like you have the valuation on Lavras better than Awali, which is I feel is a personal insult. We'll talk about that later on, though. But you have
Value,
it
value, not potential, value.
right. Valuation, yeah. Well, yeah. So you think you think Lavras is relatively cheaper than Awali, but so if Lavras was to do a 10x, it's 250 a share now. It would have to be 25. And let's say the share count only doubles, which would actually be good execution. You're talking about $2.5 billion valuation. I can already not see that happening. Like, well, maybe it happens with this one. Who knows? But I wouldn't bet on that happening with anyone. And I would have said the same thing for Great Bear, absolutely. And Great Bear got a very good valuation, right? I would not have expected it to happen. I would not have bought Great Bear at a couple of pennies and held it to $30 or whatever. That would just not happen with me. And maybe it's a mental blockage, or maybe it's prudent risk management. I don't know.
No, I agree. It's not likely that Lavras will go to $30. It's certainly not likely. I just think that it's probably at this valuation. I am in a lower valuation, but I think if you compare, I think the odds are higher to make money on Lavras and make quite a bit of money on Lavras than the odds are on these three smaller companies on the left. And we don't even have to discuss all the details of those three companies. I just think that Lavras probably has 2 or 3 million ounces, already has enough to at some point be acquired by one of the big companies. But if it becomes a Great Bear type company in terms of scale and something that the majors need, which is not very unlikely anymore, to be honest. But it's also not likely. I think they have an amazing land package. And can they find it? Is it there? I mean, nobody knows for sure, but they have amazing potential, and they have done so well with the share structure. They have insiders buying every week, like real money, putting real money into the company. So I think the value is there, and the reason that the value is higher than Awali is what they already have is potentially 2 or 3 million ounces. I don't think Awali has that yet, and that's why I think Lavras is further ahead in terms of real value backing it. Potential equal, I would say. Jurisdiction equal, but they have just done so well, and I think you need a bit of luck in the timing. If you make a discovery early, you didn't issue that many shares, and now you can issue more expensive shares, right? They did the financing at $1.50 or 30, so that helps them right now. They have not much against them, and a lot is working for them.
Yeah, well, I said that for a while too. Like we would have a different conversation if the financing was done differently. Luckily, that's behind us. I don't think it's going to happen again that way. But do you think maybe you're also a little bit biased for Lavras because of besides you own Lavras, I believe you don't own Awali, so that's one layer, I suppose, of being biased. But second one being like Lavras's chart is lower left to upper right corner, meaning it just kept going up, right? Do you think that makes you biased as well, like sort of recency bias of it's going to keep outperforming? And why I'm bringing that specific thing is because the volume with Lavras is not huge, and part of that volume have been insiders. And so where I'm going with that is thinking, to what extent is using insider purchases as marketing or as pushing the share price higher okay, and to what extent does it make you biased as a potential or as a shareholder?
Yeah, I'm always biased, especially if you own the stock and I own it. I try to do. I mean, I try to make this sort of as objective as I can. Of course, I wouldn't own it if I didn't think it was a good story, especially after a run like this. I did sell a bit, by the way. I don't own all of it anymore. But I think it's just Awali also has 30%. I didn't even take that too much into the equation, but they only have 30% of the project. They also have 100% ground, but it's very early. And then the discovery within the 30% project proves probably the point, and that's why the 100% ground is now more valuable than probably 2 years ago. But still, it's so early that you cannot give 50 or 100 million of value, I think, to that. At least not in my mind. Maybe if you compare it to Lavras, maybe I should give it a bit more value than I do right now. But that's the potential, and I gave them both 80 for potential. I gave them all 80 for potential because I actually like all these companies, but they just have different profiles. I think the main thing is in team, corporate strategy, share structure, warrants, and insider buying. Those things really are important for a company to do the right thing. And Lavras did the right thing. They did have the right connections. They financed well. They are buying in the market. So they're showing everything that they know what they're doing from a geology point of view, but also from a corporate point of view, but also from an incentive point of view. They're buying in the market and they own a lot.
Well,
and sometimes I find it difficult to buy myself if the company themselves are not buying at all in the market. That's just, how can you as an investor, why would you even buy if the insiders are not buying a share?
would that make you more prone to buying companies that are ran by rich people? So if the CEO has more money, it can just be, or whoever, chairman, whatever, they can be in the market constantly buying because they have more money and it represents less of a commitment to them. That would make you more prone to buying that stock just because they have more money. I find that challenging too.
Well, I compare always to my own. Not everybody is like me, but I never had a salary in my life as high as almost any CEO in the junior mining market. I mean, most of them at least make 150,000 Canadian. Some of them 200,000. Some of them 300,000 or 400,000. With those salaries, I think you should be able to buy it in the market. I made most of my money in the market, and while I was having a much lower salary than that, and that's why I compare it to myself. If people with those salaries are not willing to or not able, and if they're not able, maybe they're also not able to run a company. So I think they should be able to at least buy a bit in the market. And of course, some of them have 6 million. I mean, Sunpeak, for example, they have a lot of incentive, but they also got a lot of cheap shares when they founded the company. They were running the company for many years, and I think it was okay and fair that they got a lot of shares because they started the company. They are the brains behind the company and the knowledge. I haven't seen that much insider buying by Sunpeak, and I'm very biased on Sunpeak because I own a lot. And I would have liked to see a bit more insider buying since the conflict is behind us to show like we are back and we believe in it again. We go for it. So that would be one of the critical points I would have about Sunpeak. That's why I gave them a 50 on insider recent buying. And I like Sunpeak as a company. I like the management team. I talk to them a lot. I really like almost everything. But that's one thing that I cannot give more than 50 because there was just one purchase, I think, a year ago, and that's it.
I also think, and so I find it interesting how you think about these things. When I look at the project potential, you gave everyone an 80, which again I find hard to reconcile because they're different deposits. So last week we spoke to Sunpeak. Greg gave us a VMS deep dive, which was great. But typically the potential on a VMS would be way lower than the potential on an IOCG, which is what intrusive related IOCG / thing that Awale is after. So I would either place everyone else a little bit lower, well, I would actually, or Awale a little bit higher, or both actually at the same time. So to go back to that, I know we just talked about it, but to go back to that, how do you think about project potential? Potential as in what?
Well, if you're in Ethiopia, there's almost no exploration history. So with a little bit of work, with 2 years of work, they have found so many targets. And VMS, what you're saying is that VMS potential is lower than other types of deposits. If you think about Noranda and the Bathurst camp, Flin Flon camp, SK Creek, Agnico Eagle as a company started as a VMS company. They still have La Ronde as a mine, Foran, Nefson. You can come up with so many multi-billion-dollar companies that were started, grew as a VMS company, or still own as a multi-billion company VMS projects. So even though some VMS projects are small, I would not say that the potential is lower. Maybe it's even easier to find them because if you find one, there's likely to be more because they're often in clusters. That makes the potential and also the likelihood of finding them. I think this team really has experience in finding them. They have shown it several times, not just once. So I wouldn't classify it because it's a VMS lower than another type of deposit. One porphyry, can probably support a $2 billion or $3 billion market cap like Philo. But one VMS can also support $1 billion or $2 billion project valuation in other companies as well. And I think small companies have made them. For me, a company needs to be able to trade above 500 million or 800 million if they really succeed in what they are looking for. And if they can do that, that's enough for me. If a deposit, why would Newmont be in Ethiopia looking for VMS if that was not a tier one sort of type of deposit?
what I am talking about here is that, and so, well, let me start there. First of all, a caveat being for them, even if it is in clusters, for them to find that they're going to need more money. There's a financing risk to that that is not present with Awali because of that partnership. So on one end, you said Awali only has 30% of that deposit. It could be less depending on what Newmont does with it. Sure, but that's only under the condition that Newmont spends like $10 million worth of it, right? That money, it's not on Awali's treasury right now, so you're not going to see it. There's no way to value it, but it has a valuation, and so it lowers your risk. So if the IOCG is there and it's showing up the way we think that it is, the way that I think that it is showing up in, so it's one intrusive, one package, one IOCG fuel showing up in different places, that being Charger, BBM, Lando, and then a bunch of other stuff, Empire, Scepter. Awali doesn't have to go out, dilute, or risk not finding the capital. The capital is there, and these things are going to be drilled, making everything lower risk, in my opinion, therefore influencing the potential, no?
So you prefer right now post-discovery in Awali to own 30% rather than 100%?
Not post-discovery, but I also know that there would be no discovery if there's no money, or there would be a discovery but it would be with a lot of dilution. If they had to raise as much capital as Newmont has already spent on the project, if they had to raise it with the previous team at like a 10-cent valuation, I'm not even sure that we would own more of it now, that I would own more of it now if I had bought back then, if that makes sense.
Of course, it's post-discovery, it's much easier to conclude. I think almost in any scenario, it would have been better knowing this. Whatever Awali would have done, if they would have found this, then owning it 100% is way better. But of course, that's easy, and that's why I think it was prudent to option it off. I mean, I've seen other companies being successful, so I'm not against optioning it off and having, in the end, only 25 or 30%. I'm just saying that right now, with the knowledge right now, it's better to own it completely. And in Sun Peak's case, I would certainly think about that. I just think that Sun Peak, the likelihood of them doing a bad financing is much lower than, for example, the first three companies in this list. I think they will finance at okay valuations, and whatever that may be, above 40 or 50 cents. They have an enormous network. They have, they're sitting in the Pathway Capital Group, so even in the worst markets, they would always be able to get some money if really times are becoming difficult. So I think in Sun Peak's case, I will believe it when I see it. But I think they will do a good financing when the time is right for them to do a financing. I don't think that will happen in the next 3 or 4 months, but certainly within a year they will have to finance, and hopefully post-discovery as well.
What I'm asking here, though, what I'm thinking about is when you see that an exploration company is going to have to dilute, asset level dilution or equity level dilution. How do you bring that in? Like with again, just staying on Awali, because that's what I know at least a little bit more about than the other companies they have on the list. Sure, like everyone brings it up, like, oh, we only own part of that deposit. There's pros and cons to everything. That's the cons, and you can bring them up. But there's pros to having that readily available cash that Newmont has said, oh, we're going to spend that on this. So how do you bring that in your risk reward estimation, I suppose?
I think also about the exit strategy, right? I mean, Awali has a discovery that's still to be drilled out. BBM is a discovery, needs way more drilling. Then you also need to think about what's going to be the exit for Awali. And the exit is going to be way more difficult. There's no competition for Newmont, really. If Newmont really wants this, then there's no competition. I mean, nobody can. Who would compete with them for Awali as a company? Because they own the joint venture and they own a share position in Awali. So it's impossible for anyone to compete with Newmont. And that's why that competition is gone, and that makes just the company less attractive. On the 100% grounds, if Awali is doing a good job, then they are not going to give Newmont too much of an interest. And if they make a discovery there, then of course things completely change for them. So I think that makes a big difference. So you have to keep that in mind. That 30% or 25%, maybe it's too small at some point for Newmont, and Awali can buy it back, and it could be a good outcome as well. So I'm not against Awali. I'm not against Awali at all. Maybe those 60s, I did that to tease you a little bit, but
a little bit, yeah.
No, I really try to fill in the list objectively, and it's also to think about like what makes sense in this market. Why would you buy a company? And that's the main reason behind this list, not just to say good or bad things about certain companies. This is just the way I look at these 7 companies.
Mm. On the insider recent buying, we have to work, by the way, towards conclusion here because Bernie's going to be here in a minute. But on the insider recent buying thing, we also touched upon it, but I kind of judge it differently. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I judge it more like how important is this investment to the CEO and the management versus how much in absolute terms have they bought recently. Is that wrong?
I just want to see that the management team also feels it when it goes wrong. Because if they only have a lot of shares and they got those shares very cheap, then they certainly have an incentive to make it work, but they don't really have an incentive to protect the company. They could have a little bit more of a risk-taking incentive because why not just drill it out like crazy? And if it's there, we will all make them a lot of money. But if it's not there, well, we will find something new. In Orion's case, Dave Lotan owns so much of it and put so much money in it through the markets. I think he will do anything to do the best for this company. If they have a new discovery, to get the maximum out of it. If they don't make a new discovery, to get the maximum out of what they have right now. And they will not do stupid things as long as he is involved as a chairman, I think. And that's why I think insider ownership gives me, and especially what did they pay for insider ownership? That's why I have it as an incentive, but also as recent buying.
Yeah. What about you have it on here now that we're talking about the team, you have team geology. I again, knowing Andrew, I'd rate him higher than everyone else on here because I know him. So I'm biased there as well. But then you have team promotion and sales and team corporate strategy. Why does Awali get a lower score on corporate strategy? I think we have a clear corporate strategy.
Well, last financing.
Fair. Okay. But they're gone. I mean, the people responsible for that financing are gone.
Well, still happens. I mean, I don't know if they will never do it again. In my impression, Andrew is he is very concerned about geology. He's doing the right things, in my opinion. But I don't think he on his own, and he's not on his own, I guess, but he on his own is more of a geology guy than a corporate strategy guy who thinks about how am I going to do all the right things for the company the company is just a vehicle, right? But you have to do the right things with that vehicle to get, what's really in that vehicle, the geology, the project, to give that the maximum chance of, getting to the finish line. And I'm not sure if he thinks a lot about that versus he thinks a lot about making the right, doing the right things in the field. So my impression is that he, or Avali as a company right now, doesn't rank like Lavras or Orion, but more like the other companies on the left. And I think there's time for Awali to, I don't think they need it right now. They have money. They don't have to do deals right now, I think. So I think for now it's fine. But I think for Awali, it would be a good thing to get people with a bit more of a track record on corporate strategy in their company. That's what I think.
Well, with the new directors, though, there's a significant org group influence on there. Stephen Stewart and Tony Moreau from American Eagle are on the board. So and they determine partly, at least, together with Andrew, of course, the corporate strategy. So they are in there, and that counts for something definitely relative to what we had in there before. And I'm not saying what. Lightly because it is what we have. So anyways, yeah, that's how I look at it. I mean, the corporate strategy is the corporate team has been changed to what I think are very good operators.
Yeah, but I'm not trying to go against it. I mean, whether it's a 60 or a 70, we can that's something you can debate about a lot, and maybe it matters, but I'm not sure if Allcorp really did a lot of exits. Have they been involved in finance, in banking? Have they done big deals? I wouldn't rank them yet among the network companies we often talk about. The network companies that Dave Lotan referred to in March during the event. I don't think I would rank them already in those lists. And the people behind Sunpeak, not maybe like the Pathway group of people, they have done all those things together with Ross Beatty and all those names. So I don't think the Avali team has proven that yet. I don't think they are on that level yet. And that's why I would rank Sunpeak and Orion, Lavras higher on the corporate strategy than Avali right now.
But GPM and SRQ get the same score, which is also curious to me. I think SRQ would not be at this market cap if they had a 60 corporate strategy. I would actually rank them 40.
Agrees. Maybe that should be 40 or 50, right? I agree with that.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, so working toward a conclusion. What's the conclusion?
Well, conclusion is that often these smaller companies are way more risky on. Projects in a lot of cases. I actually like these three companies, these small ones, but in a lot of cases, companies have potential, right? Project potential. They have some story that they are after, and often, there's always a chance. But I think most companies make mistakes in the corporate strategy, share structure, warrants, everything in the middle, and that's why you see a lot of red there. And those companies are often, especially these three, are also micro cap companies. And I think most micro cap companies always stay a micro cap company, maybe except for a month or 2 months of a spike. And that's why I think even though those maybe offer those 100 baggers, there will be 1 or 2 or 3 of them in the next 5 years that are now micro caps that will become 100 baggers or 50 baggers. And I don't think Lavras, Avali, Sunpeak, or Orion will be a 50 bagger, unlikely. And one of those very small ones will be, but most of them will not be. And you will make a return on those last 4 ones. Lavras, Avali, Sunpeak, and Orion, and not on most of those $5 million companies. Unless you're trading and you know when to get in and out, will most of those small ones fail. And that's why you see way more red on the left-hand side and way more green on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
And then these are even companies I selected myself, so I like all of them in a way. I can find a lot of companies I would rank with lots of red, with lots of 30 and 40s. So there's still a list that I quite like, and I actually own all of them except Avali. Sorry.
No, but that's actually a good point to close it off on. Bernie's, by the way, waiting in the waiting room. We're both biased when we talk about these things, because you own these. I own Avali. Awali's. I own a little bit of SRQ too now, but Avali, and that's a crapshoot for now. That it's definitely not as clear. So number one, these things are very high risk. Number two, we're biased. We're just literally having a chat about these things. But it's also good to disagree. Like my Awali column would look differently, potentially because I'm biased, potentially because I spent a lot of time on trying to understand what's happening. But that's what makes a market. This has been a good chat. Anything else you want to add, or am I letting Bernie in?
Yeah, let him in. And I just want to say, I still like Awali. It's just a value thing, right? So I'm not against it. I'm not trying to. I included it because you like it, and that's why the discussion is more interesting. Because it's not just about these companies; it's also about the discussion, like what to buy, what not to buy.
Yeah, no, I agree. Well, at least partially, and maybe we should set aside a few hours next time to go kind of back, or whatever time, go back and forth in this. Not that I'm anywhere close to your level, but at least I can be annoying to you. And I appreciate these conversations. I'm the one who learns the most out of these conversations. So thank you for going through this with me. And you obviously enjoy that. Don't pretend that you don't. But Bernie's in the waiting room here, so I will let him in now. Let's see. All right, Bernie, you're calling in from the Yukon. We're basically sitting at 3 different parts of the world, which is interesting. But you're not in the Discovery Channel anymore. How's it going?
It's going good. We're knee deep into the field season, and placer mining is ongoing. Hard rock exploration's at a fevered pitch, and I'm home for a few days and then off to the forest again for another stint. Not sure where that's going to be, but I'm going somewhere.
Well, what does that mean for you? You're talking about prospecting and placer mining, and what do you even do? Who are you? What do you do?
I am an enigma. I'm active in the mineral industry in the Yukon and BC. I mean, we've got a couple of placer mines, and so some people consider me a placer miner. I consider myself a prospector, so I do it all: placer mining, placer exploration, but my real heart or my desire is typically in the hard rock exploration realm. So I like doing early stage hard rock exploration, project acquisition, project development, taking things to the drill stage, doing the preliminary drill work, that sort of thing. That's sort of where my niche or my bailiwick is.
Could you just in a very short say what placer mining is, and is there a space for placer mining on the exchange? I mean, is it investable for the bigger investors, or is it always sort of a small scale thing?
Well, placer mining is the business of just taking gravel and dirt and pulling gold nuggets out of the gravel and dirt. It's almost like magic. It happens really easy. So, no, it's actually a tough gig, but as far as going on to the stock exchange, I don't know too many placer deposits that would have the characteristics that you'd be able to do, like a 43-101 on or have some sort of reserve or resource base. A lot of it's often experience and intuition, right? And then experience and intuition takes me a long way, but I think it would make the typical investor a little bit queasy or nervous.
Hmm. I
Yeah,
watched.
I remember looking at your shows, and my friends looked at your shows all the time. And when I explain that I'm in the mining industry, people always, I mean, people have no idea about mining. They think of mining just as that's what you do, and it's a
Mhm.
little bit ad hoc, right? I mean, it happens on the spot. You follow your intuition, and then
Mhm.
I have to explain that most of the mining operations are, being planned for 10 years and ahead of time before it even becomes an operation. So in a
Mhm.
way, it also gives a different picture of what mining is if you don't know the difference between the two.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's again going back to the placer gig, it's a little bit more of a fly by the seat of your pants type of operation, right? I mean, in the placer world, for instance, I drill ahead of our operation. I outline ore. I take a methodical approach, and so I try to bring the hard rock science into the placer game, and that allows me to be successful in placer. But quite often, the rest of the placer operators don't follow stringent, science, and they rush into things. And there's a lot of people that come in spend a bunch of money, and then at the end of the year leave brokenhearted and destitute because it just didn't work out for them because they didn't plan. They're not used to, exploration, development, and all that sort of thing. So, um, yeah, I guess in that respect, I'd be a little bit of an enigma or, sort of different and yeah, but the hard rock, I mean, it helps bring that science into everything I do because you need good science and you need good protocols and you need a good approach and you need plans and hard rock exploration. And so I bring that sort of same style to the placer and it seems to work well.
Hmm. I was going to say earlier that I watched your kids getting yelled at on TV for far too long to believe you that plaster mining is easy.
Yeah, well, they I got two boys and one was really into the whole TV show thing and the other one wasn't.
Hmm.
And and that's how it was. And truth be told, like the TV thing brought a lot of stress into the operation that normally isn't there, right? Because the
Hmm.
TV people are looking for stress and they're very present. So, they're most active when things are going bad, right? So when proverbial poop is hitting the fan and things are going bad, that's when they're the most active, and that's when you don't want to have them around. But they need to make a show, and you need to participate in their show because you signed a contract, and you can't just throw them into the ditch and stomp over them with the excavator. So you have to treat them with a little bit of respect, and so it led to a little bit of extra stress. Plus, again, they were always looking for it. So
Yeah. Well,
whatever.
Did you become a bit of an actor as well, or I mean, do you think you always showed the real yourself? To also because I can imagine it also gives you a bit of pressure to perform, for the TV show, not just perform as a mining operation.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, on the way to the mine site in the morning, like on the one project that we were at, we drove to the site every morning, and boy, we'd have some good discussions in the truck. Okay, well, what's going to unfold today? And, typically those discussions would revolve around, oh, we're going to put the track back onto the excavator, or we're going to change a hose, or we're going to dig some dirt over here or something, right? But as you alluded to, there were a few discussions on the way up to the mine site. Okay, well, what are we going to say today? Like how are we going to, what sort of action do we want to create? So, but it was fun, right? Not everybody gets to be an actor, kind of. So, you know, I wouldn't I wouldn't do it again. Well, I'm not saying I wouldn't say I wouldn't do it again, but I'd have to think about whether I do it again. But I don't begrudge doing it.
That's actually why we called you. We're gonna start a new show. No, I'm kidding. But at least you got paid tens of millions of dollars, and now you don't have to walk the bush anymore, right?
No, they actually cost me money. We added it up, like, so again, my older boy and we sat down while my younger son was off in school at the time, but we sat down at the end of the year and we took a look at what they cost us. And holy smokes, the one year they cost us about 100 and like in time slowdowns, because it's not just a simple say a line, move on, say a line, move. No, there's takes and retakes, and hey, can we shoot this at a different angle? And oh, the sun's in a bad spot. Can we spin the sluice plant a little bit? Like, holy smokes. And so, if you add up what it cost us and what we were producing at the time, it was about 100 and the numbers about 130 ounces of production it cost us.
Wow.
And so it's not an insignificant amount of money. And then when you extrapolate or when you compare what they paid us to what they cost us, it just didn't work out. But that being said, it was fun. So, for the most part, it was fun. And, so it costs you a couple $100,000, but it was fun. So
It did. I mean, at the current prices, I was just using my calculator. About what $300,000 to $400,000 is what it costed you. What one of those seasons? That's too much.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
There's a lot of other fun stuff that you could do that might or might not involve at least a little bit of alcohol. I didn't see you drinking too much on set.
No, that was not allowed.
Not even allowed. Fun times.
Yeah. They were pretty strict. They had some rules. I had to appear in the same t-shirt every day. So I had 9 green t-shirts, and the reasoning there was that they would be able to cut in, my appearance on day 2 of June and throw it into day 19 of August. Right. And so, there was a story, a team develop or a team in the background for storyline, for content, for there was a big operation. Like the amount of people that were working in the background was quite impressive.
Did it make the job that you now have, or maybe now you return to your original job to be a prospector and a miner, did it make it easier or did it make it more difficult?
Just having done the placer mining with cameras in my face for 2 seasons, it made the seasons when the cameras weren't in my face quite simple, right? So suddenly you start realizing, like if I can handle what's the old term, maelstrom, right? So if you can handle the maelstrom when you come out of the maelstrom, it seems pretty easy. And as far as the prospecting and the hard rock exploration, it kind of, I wouldn't say I was reclusive, but, again, like I don't go to a lot of the conferences. So, 50% of the time I go to the Yukon conference. I've never been to PDAC. I've never been to Roundup. So in that respect, it allowed my face to be known and people to go, oh, there's a guy out there doing this, that, and the other thing. And and he's a prospector and he's got these projects. Oh, wow, that's cool. So, I guess for lack of a better saying, there's no such a thing as bad advertising.
We actually want to talk to you about a couple of the things happening in the Yukon right now. Not necessarily, I'm not going to be investing in a Discovery Channel. I'll tell you that much.
No.
But I don't even know who owns the Discovery Channel anymore. I think I knew
Chorus
before.
Entertainment.
Still?
I think so. Or
Good
maybe
for
they've
them.
sold out. I don't know.
Good for them.
My,
What I
my
want to
TV
talk to you
days
about
are
is
behind me.
a couple of things are
Yeah.
just the Yukon seems in there's a couple of programs though in the Discovery Channel about the Yukon. It's not only about gold mining. There's about living in the Yukon and whatnot as well.
Hmm.
What is it called? The Last Frontier? Is that the one that I'm
Yeah.
thinking about? Something like
Haven't
that.
seen the show.
Okay. Anyways, it's tough. Weather conditions are tough. It's tough to explore there.
Hmm.
Um, by the looks, it's tough to explore anywhere in the world, but definitely where like there's 40,000 people living in the Yukon, I think, and the
Roughly.
country is about the size of France or something among those. Not the country, the province is about the size of France, right? So
2 times the size of Germany.
two times is it 2 times the size of Germany? I thought it was just the
Two and
size
a
of
half.
France. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, it's big. It's not. It doesn't want to have people in it. It's not friendly to people. So how do you do? What are the challenges of exploring there?
Well, you have to be super organized, right? Your season starts in, oh gosh, we can start in our placer operations probably late April. And then we spend, late April, May, early part of June, the snow's off the hills usually by then, and the frost is out of the ground and stuff like that. And then we spend June, or mid-June to mid-September hard rock prospecting, and then when the snow comes back on the hills, we wind out the season in the placer. And so you have to be quite organized, right? If you're not organized, and you don't have a sort of game plan and everything ready and projects ready and permits ready and everything's ready, everything's got to be ready, because you're sitting there. It's like waiting at 100 yard, the 100 yard dash in the Olympics or whatever, right? So you're sitting at the starting blocks, bang, the season starts, and then you go, and you go like you go as fast as you can till the season runs out. Usually by the end of September, early October, there's snow, there's frost, the hard rocks ended, the placer's coming to an end. We've got one excavator with no heat in the excavator, so it gets fucking cold. You're sitting there not moving and slowly freezing to death, and then that's usually the signal just to end it, right? And then it takes about 2 weeks, because typically in a typical season, you've gone so hard, so fast. It's been such an intense short burst that it almost feels like you have PTSD when you're done.
What's your main business then? Is it? I mean, from the prospecting point of view, that's always a longer term game, right? I mean, mining gives you revenue immediately, I guess, but
Hmm.
prospecting is a longer term game. So how does it work for you?
Well, I kind of use the placer to help finance the hard rock exploration. We do a lot of hard rock exploration privately, right? So anytime you see a Kreft project come to market, we've done a significant amount of work prior to it hitting the market, and we use the placer to generate income, helps finance the prospecting and the development of these early stage projects, and then they come to market, and it seems to work, right? So, and then we have a long game. Like I'm playing the long game, I guess is the best way to describe it. I'm not here for taking 20 years and taking a quick hit into the industry. I'm, trying to make a empire building, I guess is the best way to describe it, where I got both my sons working in the industry, and we take our grandsons now. So I've got 3 grandsons and a granddaughter, and the 3 grandsons are coming into the forest now and starting to go to projects with us and do things. And so, the vision for the industry, or for the business anyways, is we're building for the long term. I'm looking 10, 20, 30, 40 years out. I'll be long gone, and the platform will still be there for the kids and the grandkids and the great grandkids, or whoever's coming to participate in, if they so choose.
If you find something, during prospecting, and you think, "Wow, this is pretty amazing. Nobody noticed this before,
Hmm.
but it needs a lot of work." What's your ideal way forward? I mean, if you really like it, would you try to do it yourself? Would you rather sell it to a big company that gives you an immediate cash check, or would you rather become a 10 or 20% shareholder of somebody else's public company? What would be the way to deal with an amazing prospect, but still very early.
Well, we've made, like, strangely enough, this year we made a trip to BC. It's been one of, actually, like, honestly, it's been one of our best years ever for early stage discoveries. We've made a Fort Knox type, so, like Sitka Gold or Dublin Gulch, and I know Dublin Gulch or Victoria Gold isn't a really good example or analogy, but we've made an early stage Victoria Gold analog discovery. We've made a pretty interesting, like a super interesting gold discovery in BC. We've made a copper discovery in the Yukon. We've made another copper discovery. It's been one of the best years ever for early stage discoveries, and I'm not sure why that is. I mean, we've tweaked our targeting algorithm a little bit, and I'd like to say it's because we tweaked our targeting algorithm, but typically it's a little bit of serendipity or luck that's involved in finding these early stage targets. But the path forward for these new discoveries is something along the lines of, we haven't even tried vending them out, right? So I've got two copper things, both I could probably vend them out right now, but again, we're taking the funds from the placer mine and using those, or the money that's available from the greater business, to help sort of develop these targets to a stage where I know what I'm selling, and then the buyer knows what they're getting, right? So that's the plan, and that always has been the plan, or that is the plan moving forward. That wasn't always the plan back in the day when I needed money. But the business has reached a sort of critical mass where I don't specifically need the money now, so that we can do actual proper advancement. And again, I don't want to sully my name by vending out something too soon. I don't know what it is, and that cuts both ways. Sometimes you're giving up the farm without knowing what you have, and sometimes you're selling somebody something that doesn't hold water, and that also, it's not something I want to do.
Do you think, you mentioned wanting to build an empire there back for a second? Do you think the Yukon is still the right place for that? I mean, is it still the underexplored jurisdiction that it's always claimed to be?
Like, again, going back to our summer, how it's sort of unfolded so far, we've made 4 very nice grassroots discoveries this year, 2 of which are in BC and 2 of which are in the Yukon. And it's a function of just, I don't know, maybe sometimes being in the right place at the right time, right? So, as far as the Yukon, and we're about, I'd say we're about 50-50 Yukon and BC, but there's areas of the Yukon that are beat up, that there is not really much left. There's other underexplored areas. I guess the biggest problem with the Yukon is access. Roads are sorely lacking throughout the Yukon. Other critical infrastructure, it's not so good. But again, that scares some people away, and it leaves opportunities for somebody like me, So I take advantage of my little niche in the industry. I'd say we're doing well. And both the Yukon and BC, there's grassroots targets everywhere. Like, literally, I don't, for me, it's easy. I'm sure there's other people out there that are looking at the industry going, holy, it's beat up, it's destroyed, it's hard to find. No, it's not. It's something I've been doing for 35 years. I find it easy.
Well, given that that's the case, I mean, you're bringing up infrastructure. With stuff like Snowline, that's oftentimes brought up as a potential issue. As a great deposit, great hits, keeps growing, but it's in the middle of nowhere. Would that be your number one thing if you're a retail investor, again, sitting in Europe or whatever it might be, looking at these things? Would that be the number one thing that you'd look at before buying into a Yukon-based project?
Well, I mean, using Snowline as an example, right? Yeah, it is a fabulous target, right? Is it going to work way out there? Are those grades good enough for where it is, for how remote it is, how pristine it is, for how many? I don't know. Is it actually going to work? I don't know, right? It's hard to say. I mean, it's a really nice deposit. There's a lot of ounces in the gold ground, but geez, it's a long way back there. It's a short season. It's pristine. The First Nations, obviously, there's Notchoniak Dun that are the First Nation in the area of Victoria Gold, so they're going to be a little bit skittish now. And then there's the Ross River First Nation, and they're typically a little more militant than most other groups in the Yukon. So those are the two First Nations Snowline's going to have to deal with. And again, you know, you throw on top the pristine nature of the area and everything else, boy, it's going to be tough. But on the flip side, I guess as an investor, a small-time retail guy, you just want to take a look at the thing and say, hey, is there a stock play to be had? Right. And take a look at the chart. Gosh, that thing went what from 40, 50 cents to, you know, $6, $7, right? So that's not a bad turnaround, right? 10, 12x, 14x, right? So is there a stock play to be had? That's oftentimes a different sort of question to ask than, is it actually going to end up being mined? You know, like the business is full of targets that generate wealth without ever having been mined, or you know, turn into stock plays, and you know, you can make good money on some of these things without it ever seeing production, right? So they're not interconnected.
Would you, if you generated that target and you would have sold it to Snowline early on, I mean, again, what would have been the ideal deal for you? Like getting shares? I mean, in hindsight, of course, easy to say because Snowline played out in a certain way, and you can now think, okay, having a royalty and this much cash and this much this. But how would you preferably get compensated for finding something and bringing it to someone?
You know, back in the day, when the business was suffering, and you know, I brought this thing from nothing, effectively nothing. There were, you know, a couple of seasons where I didn't have enough money to buy Christmas presents for the kids, right? So it was tough times at the start, right? And those tough times make you do things that you would normally not do if you had more money, right? So you would maybe sell if you had I had a really good project right at the beginning, and that sort of made people go, hey, he knows what he's doing. And so I vended that thing out, and it's actually the Banyan underlying project in Banyan Gold now, right? And so I vended that out, and I got, at the time, because you're starving and not quite desperate, you know, like I'm not at the blood bank selling blood and stuff like that, but you know, you don't have a lot of money, and so you don't have a lot of options. And now, you know, 30 years on, I have more money and I have more options. So the process or the protocols or the, you know, the asks have changed, and I'm more likely to take shares, and I'm more likely to take future considerations than, you know, 20 years ago or 30 years ago when I needed the cash, right? So, you know, 30 years ago, my deals were typically cash, and now, you know, shares, give me shares. I don't care. Fuck, I don't need the money. So, not that I don't need the money, but, you know, if I can get my costs out, you know, like I said, we spend a lot of time and effort and money of our own privately in these things. And, you know, if I can get my cash out, great. And then I'll take shares for the upside, or if we just need to go to shares, you know, every deal is different. Right. So,
What is a good deal? Like if a company I'm in is going out there and doing a deal with a prospector,
yeah.
What are good things and what are bad things to see in those deals?
Well, like ultimately, a good deal is a deal where everybody can make money, right? Where the company coming in has a tangible path forward to success, where the prospector or the vendor, you know, can make some money as well, and where the shareholders, you know, aren't getting skinned, right? Like I see deals come by that are so rich. You know, you just know this thing has to be a home run for the shareholders and the company that picked it up to be successful, right? And so sometimes I don't think those are the most successful deals because they have a habit or a tendency to just last 1 year or 2 years, and then the prices and costs get out of control for the public company, and then it falls flat on its face, right? And then the property itself also has a little bit of a stink around it because the company's walked away from your property now. And why have they walked away? Well, is it because of the property not holding water, or is it because the company was faced with these egregious, outrageous payments, right? So, I mean, a good deal is something that everybody can live with, where everybody can reasonably make money. I'm an investor as well, so I mean, I'm not out there trying to skin people alive. I'm out there trying to, obviously get value for my projects, but I also, again, am aware of structuring a deal so that people can come in and make money and, develop things properly and not get scared away at the first, at the first year or the second year level because the payments are suddenly, outrageous.
Yeah, so you understand the importance of that deal. Would you prefer to be a partner of a company, or would you like to have Bernie Gold at some point on a TSXV and run it yourself, or have people around you and together run it rather than giving your project away for a certain number of shares?
We kind of have Bernie Gold. I'm sort of as a major shareholder in a little company called Kestrel Gold. One thing I've learned about that is, although I'm a great prospector, and well, I think I'm a great prospector. Others might disagree, but whatever. Bernie Gold is Kestrel Gold, and Kestrel needs a better management team, a more active management team. And I'm on the advisory board. I'm not really in there as a director or a president, but it's got one of my projects, and I'm thinking of putting another project in, and but it's a tough game. Like, the public market game in itself is tough, right? It's not easy. It's like a sports team or anything else, right? There's defenders, there's midfielders, there's strikers, and everybody, works together. There's a coach, there's a manager, there's fans, and it's a big, it's a tough gig. I like taking interests in companies. I have, I'm up to nine, almost 10% in quite a few little juniors. And, I mean, it's for me, one of the more recent deals I did was with a company called Canex, and we put a copper porphyry into Canex, and we structured the deal, going back to how to structure a deal, but we structured the deal so that the guy could do the permitting and do the science and do the compilation without facing these massive payments up front. So, again, I'm in the stage of my career where I can take a look at the guy, know he's a good operator, and know he does quality science, and and do things accordingly that works for everybody. The pragmatic approach.
Yeah, so kind of, I know that company. I think they have a real scientist running it. They have some
Yeah.
salespeople around him, so that he also gets. I don't think the CEO is a natural salesperson. He's a real geo.
Yeah.
So there's a bit of support on the corporate side or sales side, I could say. Would
Mhm.
you be involved? Like, would you want to be involved in that selection process, or would you rather be just that partner, sort of on the sidelines, giving the project, giving the knowledge of the project, but that's it? Or do you like the part of corporate stewardship and financing and that part of business?
Again, I'm finding out with my activities in Kestrel that it's a lot of work in the corporate side of things. So, sometimes it's always best to know where your limitations lie. Know your limits, stay within them, and I don't know, maybe I'm limited only because I haven't really tried, participating in the corporate side. Maybe I'm limited because I just, haven't done it, like I'm busy, right? There's only so many things I can do. So in an ideal world, I'd have a management team that does that sort of thing, and then we would focus on the mineral exploration and the project development, permitting and targeting and all that sort of stuff. I mean, that's where I think I shine. Like, could I shine in the corporate world? Maybe. I don't know. I got a nice smile. So
That's at least part of what you need. You mentioned owning
Mhm.
9 to 10%, or what, under 10% ownership in a couple of companies. How do you pick them? Does that just kind of happen? Is it on purpose? Do you still buy in the open market? How does that work for you?
Oh yeah, I'm pretty active. I'm an active investor. Let's definitely an active investor. I manage a fairly sizable portfolio. Whatever comes out of the placer mine and doesn't go into hard rock exploration goes into the investing portfolio, and so we work out from there as well. So it's another sort of money generator for the business overall. How do I pick my companies? Like a dartboard, stuff like that. Ouija. I hear rumors on the internet. It's just, like quite often I will know what's happening before it happens,
Hmm.
right? Because I guess I'm in the trenches. You're seeing deals unfold. There's a major that's visited property X, or there's a tour going on property Y, and this company's doing this, or this company's doing that. So
Hmm.
I like to keep my ear to the ground, and when opportunities present themselves, I like to take advantage of them. I guess that's the best way to describe it.
Hmm. But I mean, there must be a process, or like, well, what are you looking for? Is it only Yukon and BC related? Are you doing stuff in Africa? Can I interest you in stuff? No, I'm kidding. But what do you do? Yeah, like, how do
What do
you
you got
pick?
in Africa? I uh I typically like to stay within my sort of area of expertise, right? So BC and the Yukon, I know that like the back of my hand, right? I've been in every little mining camp in BC and the Yukon, well, at least in the the north half of BC and all of the Yukon. Like if it's on the radar of some company, I've been there, or been by it, or been on top of it, or been through it, or been around it. And so that helps sort of formulate areas where I get involved, right? Um, I have money, but I don't like wasting money. So I don't like truly investing in things that I don't understand. Like, I get the whole idea that the public market, you need a good management team, you need good promo, but ideally, I always think it comes down to the rocks, right? Are the rocks conducive to a big target or a big score? And if the rocks are conducive to a big target or a big score, then I start taking a look. And when you got good rocks, you can, it kind of reminds me of when I first started out in the placer gig. There were a couple of miners my dad knew that they were terrible placer miners, but they had tremendous property. And they'd be the equivalent of a really good management team, but or not a really good, but a really bad management team. But boy, oh boy, did they have ground. Like their ground, you could pan an ounce of gold in an afternoon, right? So when you put the equipment to it, you got a lot out. So I always, when I make investment decisions, it always comes back to the ground. Is the ground conducive to big deposits? Is the ground conducive to a big score, right? And given my sort of background in the mineral industry, I can generally decipher if something's going to work or not.
I think it's everybody needs a sort of an edge to make some money in this business.
Oh, for
Um,
sure.
are you said you make money in this business, so are you really? I mean, are you buying and selling in the market and actually making a profit? Because I wonder, most people can't. And how do you do that?
Well, I'm buying and holding right now in juniors. Yeah, I mean, in the last couple of years, I've had oh gosh, uh, well, a good solid 10x, and we were, I loaded up the dump truck before it went 10x. So that was a nice win. I've had a few other smaller wins along the way. I think you can probably tell from scanning my Twitter feed where I've been.
Hmm.
Sitka Gold comes to mind, American Eagle comes to mind. Those are, Kreft projects, right? So
You
it
cannot
was
say that you made a 10x without naming the company.
10x on American Eagle.
Ah, okay.
Right. Like I said, we backed up the dump truck on that one. So I knew I was busy buying in the market at 3 cents.
Hmm.
So
Well, I asked you that about the Yukon, but I should have asked you that about BC too, because it kind of seems that well, pretty much all the copper gold projects in BC have already been looked over. Is there
Hmm.
still another 10x left to be had? I mean, American Eagle was a unique situation.
Hmm.
The ore group actually, we were just talking about it before you got on, but the ore group kind of created a creative deal structure, right? They financed it the right way. Without that financing, there would not have been any drilling.
Hmm.
So that was kind of a unique situation there. But are there more of those? Are there many more of those? How do you see that?
I'm sitting on a couple right now.
In BC?
One in BC, one in the Yukon.
Are you just
Yeah,
going to
I
tease
mean,
us or are you going to give us the names?
I'm going to tease you.
Okay, fair enough. It's up to you.
Until the ground position until we've done a little bit more regional work, I mean, it's tough to say where we are and what we're doing. Let's just say that I see like there's the Man Prime Dillard property. That's kind of an example MPD, and that thing's been beat up, trashed around, gone over 100 times. Not really a fan of the project. So there's a lot of these sort of beat up, misused, used, reamed out copper porphyries that just don't excite me. But every so often you do see early stage stuff, and then I think that's really a sort of a problem with the industry, right? So, a couple days ago, I had a guy call me. He's looking for a project, and I was trying to sell him on some of this early stage stuff that I was doing, and he had no interest. And I'm like, okay, well, whatever. I don't really care, right? Like you're either interested or you're not. I'm not a sales pitch type of guy. Okay. So I'm gonna front you an idea. If you like it, great. If not, whatever. I don't give a shit. Because you
Hmm,
know, whether now or 6 months from now or 9 months from now, when the incubation period's over, it's gonna sell.
hmm,
So you can either, you can do what you want, and stuff like that. But he was all interested in an advanced project. Do you have anything advanced? Do you have anything with a resource? Do you have anything with a reserve? Well, so that again, that kind of leaves a little niche for me to exploit, which is this early stage exploration, and,
hmm.
and we're good at it. So,
Do you have
you know,
something with a DFS that's trading at a sub $10 million market cap? I'll take that.
do I have any what?
Anything with a DFS on it, a definitive feasibility study that you're selling for less than 10 million, I'll take that. But
Okay,
it
fair enough. I'll send you a DM.
Yeah, do it. It's interesting though that people are still approaching you, given again the entire situation in the Yukon right now. We touched upon it a couple of times. I'd be remiss not to ask you this, and we should work towards closing it off here. But so maybe last topic: what is the future of the Yukon, given what just happened at Victoria? Are there going to be big consequences? Are you concerned? What are you seeing?
It all depends again how l- far out you're looking, right? I've got a empire building long-term vision for the business.
Hmm,
And I don't know if the kids and the grandkids are going to share it, but that's the plan from now and from where I sit. So as much as Victoria Gold is a disaster, well, not a disaster, like I mean the half life of cyanide solution is, I think, 2 or 3 years. So, I mean, this isn't a long-term thing. You can neutralize it and just get a bunch of peroxide or whatever it is that neutralizes the stuff, and off you go. Like so. In the short term, though, it's going to cause a lot of upheaval. But if you have a big long-term vision for the industry and for your presence within the industry, I don't lose any sleep at all over it. I see the companies share prices, like again, Victoria Gold obviously going to zero, Snowline Gold suffering because of all of this, Banyan Gold suffering. A lot of companies are suffering because of the Victoria Gold disaster. And I think, to me anyways, that's a short-term fluctuation. It doesn't really change my strategy a huge amount. Maybe we raise the level of what a new acquisition, raise the bar for what new acquisitions have to cross, right? But by and large, it's business as usual at Kreftco.
hmm. But you don't think that like financing conditions or permitting conditions or anything is just gonna get harder in the Yukon? So get to a place where it's harder forever, basically.
it's getting harder forever everywhere, right? I mean,
It's true.
it's like it's like a it's like you're on a roller coaster or a merry-go-round and everybody's slowly sliding out to the edges and some people fall off and flop off. I don't see the Yukon, and there might be a stain on the Yukon for a couple of years, but again, I just see that as an opportunity. I don't see that as an end to my business. I just see it as an opportunity to take advantage of, right? Smart money buys at the bottom, and that's what we plan on doing. Um, is it any different than Mali where the government is squeezing producers? Is it any different than what Centera went through in Kyrgyzstan or wherever that was? Like, is it any different than any of these other places where, assets are devalued because of the actions of government? I mean, look at Mexico with their mining laws and stuff like that. Like, holy shit, they're going to ban open pit mining in Mexico? Like, really?
Hmm.
Like that's, like, so when you look at it and just when you have a narrow window down on the Yukon and you go, yeah, you know what? Like honestly, there's going to be until the dust settles and the smoke clears from this Victoria Gold incident, there's going to be a little bit of a stench around the Yukon, right? That much is for sure. But I mean, I don't see this being a long-term problem. Again, with the half-life of cyanide, this thing will end. There's a finite amount of time where it's, and then memories are going to fade, or maybe not fade, but you know, it's again, it all depends on how long your view is for the industry and how many years you can afford to wait.
Well, we should not wait any more years before we repeat this conversation because I think the last time we spoke was like 2 years ago or something. So hopefully we'll
Mhm.
have you back on soon. But yeah, let's keep it at this for now. What do you think? Anything else? Luke, what do you think? Should we be asking anything else here at the end?
No, I found it a very interesting conversation. I think it's different view. We always talk about it from an investor point of view, and I kind of like the way you look at it and a lot of wisdom you can see over the years that you gathered from many perspectives. So I actually enjoyed it a lot. Thank you.
Well, thank you for having me, guys.
Thanks so much for doing this, Bernie. Hopefully speak soon.
All right. Take care, everyone. Don't sunburn
Thanks.
yourself, Luke.
Yeah. No risk of me sunburning myself or sunburning whatever you see that, but we don't participate in the weird ritual that you guys call summer over here in Belgium. We don't do that. But yeah, thank you both. You cannot drop off. I know you have to go. And I also have Chad Peters waiting for me here again, as mentioned at the beginning, though. Go back and listen to the disclaimer there, because Ridgeline Minerals is a paying advertiser on this channel, and everything we talk about on this channel involves an incredibly high degree of risk. We mentioned it a couple of times. Again, read the disclaimer. There's one on your screen right now. Listen to the one at the beginning. That's a more expensive one. If you don't like losing money, you should do all that. But Chad, you are here now. Thank you for being this. Thank you for being this. Well, thank you for being this. I suppose you're easy to look at, but also thank you for being here. This is the first time I'm doing this new segment, and we've talked about Ridgeline at depth. So I'm not sure what I'm 100% sure what I'll be calling this one yet, but it'll be something like excavating executives or figuring out how they got from rock bottom to rock boardroom, if you will. So let's take it all the way back for you personally to little Chad, who was, by the way, born in what, by the looks of it, something like 1989, 91?
No, 86.
86. Okay, yeah,
Yep.
I'm giving you compliments already. Yeah.
Yep, there you go. I feel good.
Where are you from?
So I actually grew up in a little farm town called Cardale, Manitoba. So closest major city of, about 100,000 people would be Brandon, Manitoba. So this is kind of middle of nowhere farm country in Canada, in the prairies. And grew up on a farm my whole life. Parents were both, my dad farmed and my mom was a nurse. And so, we got used to hard work pretty early, right? Living on a farm. So, our summers, I didn't have an official job that paid me, but, dad was out making us, put in new fence lines or feed the cows, all that kind of stuff every single day. So
Manitoba is a real place. I always thought it was kind of this mythical place that only existed on a map.
it's like a Canadian flyover province, right? It's kind of like Kansas in the US. not a lot of people visit. So
What kind of kid were you? Were you kind of an introverted rock collector? Or were you the high school jock? What were you?
no, actually, it's kind of funny. My mom actually has photos of me. I'll try to track it down for you, but she has photos of me wearing my dad's a pair of like 1980s style, overly large sunglasses, and I'm sitting in the driveway at like 3 years old, smashing rocks with a hammer, kind of thing. And so she said it was she didn't realize it at the time, but probably was going to be in the rock business pretty early. So yeah, no, I played a lot of sports. Typical kind of boy, right? Was out playing outside a lot and played every sport I could get my hands on, and didn't pay a whole lot of attention to school until university. So
Well, when did you realize that you wanted to be in the rock sector, as you call it?
yeah, well, it's funny. My uncle was cousin, sorry. He was an efficiencies expert for Chevron. So he would travel. He was like a consultant that would travel around to the Middle East, South America for all these Chevron operations, and he would go into the drilling ops and go in and essentially try to improve efficiencies, cut costs, you name it, right? But he was essentially a roughneck driller that worked his way all the way up to this kind of level. And so I saw him at Christmas, probably when I was about 16 or 17, and he just said, offhand mentioned, you should go be a geologist. Those guys make a ton of money. Now, what he didn't specify is that was oil field geologists that make a ton of money. So I was like, great, sounds awesome. I'd like a bunch of money. Went to university, realized oil field geology was probably the most boring thing you're ever going to find, and very quickly switched over to hard rock mining as my specialty in university, and then was told kind of after I'd already made that choice that, oh, by the way, this pays half as much as the oil field does. So it was kind of a funny way I got into it. I think being just a young 16-year-old looking for a decent job, but once I got into it and got into university, I realized it was pretty amazing, and I stuck with it after that.
So you show up there, you're like, "Hi, my name's Chad Peters. I would like a bunch of money," and they're like, "Oh, sir, Wall Street's that way."
Yeah, I was like, give me the monies now, and they're like, no, sorry, you're in the wrong business. So, no, it was good. That's kind of what got me started in it, and then I went to university and really enjoyed the first few classes I took, and got lucky and got a summer job in I think my second summer, being just a grunt for what became Premier Gold Mines, Ewan Downey's Premier Gold Mines, which is now I-80. That was when they were still like a two-person company, and they just needed a young geo to go, hump core around, carry core boxes and cut core and stuff. So got lucky there. Got along really well with that team, and Ewan ended up paying for the rest of my university for the following 2 years. So he paid for my tuition. I came back and was a summer student every year. And then when I graduated, I was offered a full-time job with Premier and kind of took off from there.
Awesome. Was that your actual first job? I mean, you said you did work on the farm, but did you ever work at like an ice cream store or something?
I cut grass at the Ball Diamonds. My hometown had 14 people in it. Like that's literally how, like, we were in the middle of nowhere, farm country. And so our little village, whatever you want to call it, we had a church, a hockey rink, a Ball Diamond, and a post office. So job opportunities were somewhat limited at the time. So I got a job one year. My dad pulled some strings and got me cutting grass at the Ball Diamond, and that was the extent of my paid jobs, I guess you could say. But like I said, on the farm, it was a full-time outdoor job, essentially, taking care of the cattle, and spring and fall was seeding and harvest. So, I always pretty much just got used to working outdoors and working long hours from a pretty young age.
Was there a lesson in there that you still use to this day because I find it kind of weird. I've had a very colorful upbringing as well, just doing very different things along the way. And I still find myself looking back and being like, oh, that was actually cool. I learned something that I'm doing today. I learned when I was 11 years old doing whatever odd job that I was doing. What's that for you?
Yeah, for me, I think my dad did a pretty amazing job of making old equipment on the farm last far longer than it ever should. He kind of became, he was a real jack of all trades, as far as he could always fix something, whatever it was, right? Because the closest place, the closest service shop to fix our equipment was 2 hours away, right? So very expensive to call someone out. So he learned over time to pretty much just find a way to make things work. And surprisingly, I mean, I don't think I realized it at the time, but that really was a core piece of how my career started. my dad was able to fix problems. So was my mom. My mom was great at that kind of stuff as well. But you learn early to fix problems because no one's around to help you. And that really kind of parlayed into my early days as a geologist, right? Because I spent most of my early career was sleeping in a tent somewhere in Northern Ontario, the Arctic, really rough, remote jobs that had no, there was no backup, right? You choppered in and out. And so I got really good at just fixing problems, right? And then finding a way to make difficult situations, finding a way to kind of work through them. So I think that set a good base for kind of what became my career as an exploration geologist. And honestly, it probably did pretty well for the CEO job as well, right? Because it's just constantly fixing problems and finding a way to make something out of nothing, I guess. So
competitiveness is part of it too, right? It's a competitive business, right? You're competing for capital, whether you want to see that way or not. Basically, all the companies you meet at conferences are a competitor of sorts.
Yep.
Do you ever play sports? Were you ever into competitive something?
Yeah, I was pretty active. Played a lot of hockey and baseball, volleyball, and was the equivalent of like would be, I guess I was a state champion in badminton, which is a really unusual thing to be good at, I guess, right? Maybe that's a small town Canada thing or whatever. But so yeah, no, I was very competitive growing up, played a ton of sports. I mean, the only thing to do in Manitoba when it's minus 40 was either go to school or go to the hockey rink. So got very competitive through sports and just learned how to fix problems through a life on the farm and got used to kind of hard work, I guess. So that's actually how I got hired from you and Downey. He told me the story. I certainly didn't have the highest GPA when I was applying for that job with Premier this summer. Like that wasn't, the GPA wasn't my strong suit, I guess.
What was it? What was your GPA?
It was probably, I think, like a 2.8 or something. It was just below a B average, kind of thing. But it was competitive, and so I sent him my resume, and the thing that caught his eye is that I grew up on a farm. So he said, "Yeah, no, we're going to hire the farm kid because I know he at least knows how to work hard." So
I know a guy from Manitoba. I know literally one other person from Manitoba. Probably not. Probably know more, but they don't ever mention it. So you're strong for mentioning it. Jokes aside, he always said I was into what did he call it? He said I was into the SS and me being in Belgium, the SS closest thing to me that I can think of is not great. But he called it swamp skating SS.
Yeah. Okay.
Where
we did our share of that. Yeah.
Where did you say you went to college again?
I went to University of Manitoba in Winnipeg, which is the largest city in Manitoba.
Oh, okay, makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. So, what do you think you would do today if you weren't in mining, just farming with your dad, or like what would that look like?
Honestly, I don't even know what I'd be doing if it wasn't for mining. Honestly, I think I'd be starting some business or company of some sort, right? And it'd probably be agricultural services, or you know what I mean? Like it'd probably be tied. Like if I was back in Manitoba, it probably would be something that'd be tied to agriculture or something of that sort. But yeah, I think I'd always kind of was pretty entrepreneurial growing up, so I think I'd be doing something like that.
Yeah. Where do you live now?
I live in Reno, Nevada. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So because of the project then?
Yep. Yeah, Nevada's home. So
okay. So you would is that where, because that's where you live with your family, I suppose. So you moved your family for the job?
Yeah, well, funny enough, I almost quit the mining space back in, it would have been 2010, because I was really getting tired. Like I said, it sounds like a lot of fun, being up in the Arctic, choppering around and stuff, but that wears yourself down after, 4 or 5 years of essentially seeing your what at the time was my soon to be wife, seeing her maybe 40 50 days of the year, right? The rest of the time I was sleeping in a bush camp somewhere.
Wow.
So I was getting tired of it, so I was looking at other opportunities, potentially going back, working on the farm, taking over the farm, or something of that sort. But anything that would get me just essentially being closer, because my wife and I wanted to eventually start a family, and that wasn't going to be possible if I was gone for the length of time that I had been in the past. So almost left completely. And then luckily enough, Premier actually picked up the McCoy Cove project, which is now an ongoing development play for I-80. And they needed somebody just to kind of help head things up. And so they offered me, just said, hey, come down for 6 months and help us get this up and off the ground. And if you don't like it, you can always come back to Canada. And my wife and myself and the cat at the time moved down and drove down with a trailer. And yeah, and we stayed 6 months and ended up loving it. So that was 13 years ago, and I actually just passed my citizenship exam last week. So don't have any
Congratulations.
plans. Yeah, so be a dual citizen soon.
Nice.
Yeah.
I still have to go through a bunch of checks to even go to a conference in the US, so it's challenging. So
Yeah.
I have a question about that cat that I'm gonna have later on though, because I'm a dog person, so I don't know how I feel about that at this point, but we'll see later on. You've
Gary was great. You would have liked him.
you probably had to make other sacrifices along the way too, though, I suppose. What do you think is the biggest sacrifice you had to make, specifically when you moved from your previous role into the CEO role?
For sure. Well, I think like the biggest sacrifice that I had to make for sure is, I had a great job working for Premier, and I-80's, a pretty big name in Nevada now, big story. I could have stuck with that and probably been the VP exploration and had a very good career, just steady, not having to worry about, where the next paycheck was coming from and stuff like that. So I think the biggest thing that I had to give up when starting Ridgeline was stability, right? Like,
Hmm.
when I first started the company, I naively thought it was going to be funded within 3 to 6 months, and it took me 15 months to get the seed round up and off the ground. And I had actually quit Premier Gold Mines when I started Ridgeline because I felt that I couldn't be the chief geologist for Premier and start something behind you and then the team's back, kind of thing of starting my own thing, right? And then being like, oh, surprise, by the way, I'm leaving, and I started my own company and
Hmm.
took all the best projects I could find with me, right? So that didn't feel like the right way to start Ridgeline on the wrong foot. So yeah, it was a huge sacrifice. I mean, I didn't take a salary for a year and a half, and my wife Carla luckily was able to support the family, and I was able to sell whatever stock I had accumulated in Premier to keep kind of the lights on as well. But yeah, it was a tough year and a half for sure, right? And learned a lot of made a lot of mistakes, I think, in the early days of pitching and stuff like that, and reasons why people didn't invest for the first 10, 12 months, and then retailer my pitch and kind of put the ego aside and realized my company was worth essentially nothing. And that's when people started buying. People were interested in the seed round as soon as I said, look, it's worth nothing, buy it, but buy some cheap stock with me and we'll try to
Hmm.
do something with it. So it took a while.
Canadian capital markets do like cheap stock, but it sounds like your wife Carla is the big reason of why Ridgeline exists today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like if she's pretty humble about it, but honestly, I actually tried. I was offered two pretty significant roles during that 15-month period where I could have just, moved on to another company, big step up in pay, and gone into a VP exploration role, and kind of just chalked it up as a failed experiment and then moved on, right? And both times she talked me out of it and said,
Nice.
essentially, like, you've put this family through hell, kind of thing, quitting your job and trying to make this happen, so you're gonna make it happen. And so I declined both of those opportunities, and then was able to get a seed round off the ground. And I mean, I think this jury is still out as to whether Ridgeline has officially been a success yet, but we're at least keeping our head above water and I think doing some really good work. So
Sounds like a keeper, man.
yeah, no, she's pretty great.
Do you guys have kids?
We have 10 and 8-year-old boys. Yeah.
When you said 10, I was kind of
10
concerned
kids.
because I thought you were going to say we just have 10 kids, 10
No,
like.
no, yeah, just a few. No, we capped it at 2, but they both think they're going to be geologists, so I'm actively trying to talk them out of that. So we'll see how successful I am.
Yeah, talk them into an MBA first and then geology. That seems to be working out for some people.
I'd say mining engineering and an MBA would be a far better approach if they want to get into the mining space. But
Yeah, good point. If they even want to deal with capital markets, because that's like, you have to have the affinity of wanting to deal with the capital markets as well, right? I talk to a lot of geologists who are first time CEOs in their 50s because they're like, oh, I just hated that part of the business. I just wanted to go and do rocks. I don't want to do capital markets. So mining's tough. Mining's a tough industry, or so I've been told. I mean, I've been kept safe in my little glass dungeon here, but still, I mean, even in conversations like this one that are fairly easy or nice guy to talk to, I still feel out of my depth most of the time when I'm talking to geologists. Has that ever been the
that
case?
makes 2 of us.
Well, has that ever been the case for you? That's when I want to go with this. Like, have you ever felt completely out of your depth in your career, or when you were working, or now with Ridgeline? How do you cope with that? How do you deal with that?
Yeah, I think moving down in Nevada certainly felt out of my depth, like just running drill programs, the geology, the way these deposits formed in Nevada was certainly a big change from what I was used to and working in Canada. So that was a huge kind of learning curve for me. And then starting Ridgeline, I mean, I totally felt like an imposter for probably 2 or 3 years, right? And
Mm.
still total, kind of being like, like I shouldn't even be having this on my business card, right? Because certainly I feel comfortable with the rocks, but it took a lot of time to get used to the capital market side of the business, understanding all the little nuances, of how financings are done, how to treat your shareholders well, right? Without also giving anyone preferential treatment, right? Like everyone wants to feel, all your shareholders want to feel like, they're the most important shareholder in your registry, right? And
Mm.
you have to do your best to make sure that you support all your shareholders in that way, right? And making them feel like they have a say and that you're listening to what they have to say. And at the same time, you have to find that balance where you're not actually favoring certain shareholders, right? Giving the wrong information to, or giving inside information to
Mm.
select shareholders and not others. So it takes a long time, I think, of getting used to that, navigating that whole aspect of the business. Starting to feel pretty comfortable in it now. Just hope the markets in general just turn around and be a nice change for everybody.
Yes, that's also part of something that I want to talk to you about, because mining is there's stuff you can control and stuff you don't control, and it seems like once the capital markets are involved, there's more things that you cannot control versus
Yep.
things that you can control. And I mean, it's also kind of a tricky balance, because you have to have the you have to have the confidence to go out and tell people, hey, give me some money, I want to literally sink it into the ground and see if there's a treasure there. Like that's the literal
Right.
pitch at the beginning, right? But you have to have that confidence. But how do you have that confidence if you haven't done it before? Was that a bridge for you to gap as well?
Well, my wife would say definitely that I never lacked confidence. She'll be the first to say that. So I mean, I don't think the confidence was necessarily the issue in the early days because, I had a lot of confidence in what I was doing when it came to the rocks, right? Like Mike Harp, my VP, phenomenal geologist. I could always fall back on him. I knew we had good projects. I myself had been lucky to be a part of a great team with Premier. So we found about 12 million ounces in a 10-year period, right? And I was able to be a big part of that all the way from a junior geo to chief geologist of the US operations. So I had that confidence level. I knew on the technical side that I could execute. I think where it came down to is I still was incredibly green on the capital markets side, and I got really
Mm.
lucky that I had a couple great board members and just mentors, friends and groups, folks in the industry that kind of took me under their wing a bit and made a point of trying to teach me all those little intricacies, right? That you can't just necessarily learn, right? And you don't want to burn a shareholder. You might say the wrong thing to a potentially great shareholder just because you handle a question incorrectly, right? So I got a lot of coaching in the early days from folks like that, and it helped a lot.
Yeah. I guess it's hard though if you go somewhere to give someone a lunch and they ask you when you're going to turn a positive EPS. I've seen that happen with an
Yeah.
exploration company. The CEO kind of got pissed off, and I thought to myself, like, well, maybe they should know how to handle this differently, because you're going to get those questions that maybe you don't know how to handle from not being sort of in a public role. Are you still friends with Ewan, by the way?
Yeah, no, we chat.
Oh,
I mean, he's running a like a $600 million company nowadays. So I chat with him less than I used to. But yeah, no, he's a great guy
mm.
and was one of my first shareholders in Ridgeline.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
It probably hurts. I interviewed him only once, but it probably hurts to hear that it's a $600 million market cap company, right? So he'd probably
No,
believe
no,
it should be way higher.
that's water under the bridge, right? No, honestly, like I don't regret starting the Ridgeline thing or missing out on that run into what I-80 has become, largely because if I hadn't left I-80 when I did, I don't know if I ever would have left, right?
Hmm.
Or it wasn't Premier at the time. But I had two young kids, and I kind of had to make that choice. I personally felt like I had two choices, right? I could either start a company really young, when my kids were still young and they kind of wouldn't remember, that hectic kind of process of trying to get a junior company off the ground, or I would have to wait till I was in my 50s, right? So to me, it felt like either I was doing it then or I was going to wait till my kids were out of school, graduated, I'd take that easy job that was, a 9 to 5er, and be my kids' hockey coach and stuff all the way through
Hmm.
all through their graduation, and then I'd give it a try. So I think it was the right timing and stuff like that, and I was able to use my equity that I built over a 10-year period in Premier to exit that stock and start up Ridgeline. So it all worked out the way it should have.
It's tough though. I mean, with the doing what you've done is tough, let alone having young kids. I don't think I can put my hand on my heart and say that I would do it as well. Like I feel like I have an entrepreneurial spirit, but I don't like this seems like a relatively big jump. And being a hockey coach doesn't sound too bad either.
Yeah, no, it was all right. I mean, to be fair, I coached 2 hockey teams last year, so it's not like I escaped that by starting Ridgeline. Still try to be pretty active with the boys and stuff. But no, I'm really happy where we're at, and Ridgeline, just like everybody's gotten hurt pretty hard by the markets over the last few years, but I think that we're finding ways to do creative deals with majors, keep create kind of a base for the company in with our deals that we're doing, and we're not done with those kind of deals yet. So yeah, I think that we've been able to navigate a really, really, really tough market, and I think we're hopefully seeing things turn around here over the next couple of years. So
How do you deal with like you've had failures for sure, and
oh yeah.
unfortunately, I don't wish it, but there's going to be more. There always are more. How do you cope with that? Like, who do you? I mean, you mentioned your wife a couple of times. Is that who you typically go to just to talk it through, or like how do you cope with failure?
Yeah, no, of course. I mean, my wife and I are essentially partners in Ridgeline, right? Like,
Hmm.
so when starting this whole thing up. So always rely on her, my board. We've got a great team of folks that, and actually just buddies in the industry, right? Like the other CEOs that have gone through the exact same things, you can just call up and kind of have a little bit of a bitch fest, hey, sky's falling, and then you kind of move on. So but yeah, no, it's been I guess you could say, like, I feel like for every failure that we've had as a company, whether it just be, maybe not taking advantage of the right time to finance or things, those are always learning experiences, right? Like it's funny. I used to always, when I was first founding the company, every single, like, grizzled old CEO would just be like, if you have money on the table, take it, right? That was a constant thing everybody said. Just, if there's money on the table, take it. Doesn't matter what the price is. You'll never regret raising money, but you'll regret walking away from cash. And so, of course, I think myself and most other young CEOs, we all make that same mistake, even though everybody's telling you, to go ahead and take the cash. So, we've cut back. I mean, I still remember I cut back a 50-cent financing a year, 6 months after our IPO. I had 5 million on the table, and I cut back to I think 3.75, because we were about to put out our deal with Nevada Gold Mines, right? So I thought, oh, our stock's going to go to 80 cents, and then I'll go raise a bunch more money, right? Well, stock went down 15% on the deal. And even though it was a great deal, the bottom fell out of the market by the time I got it announced. And I look back and go, that was my best opportunity to raise cash, the least dilutive opportunity to raise cash in the history of the company. And I cut it back, right? And now I'm raising money at 20 cents, 12 cents. And, you kind of, so I think you look back at those kind of things, and those are mistakes that I'm not going to make again.
Is that your biggest regret so far? Again, as I mentioned, we all have mistakes that we've made, failures and stuff like that. But what about regrets? What's your biggest regret so far?
Probably not being a lawyer. I see my lawyer bills that come through on things and stuff. I hadn't realized I picked the wrong business, right? So that's the actual gold mine. But jokes aside, yeah, I think probably my biggest regrets, serious regrets that I have in the company, just really stem from the capital markets, right? Not taking advantage when the stock was high and cash was far more available than I think I really realized at the time. 2020, 2021 was still a pretty decent time to raise capital. Didn't necessarily take advantage of that the way I should have. And looking back, hindsight's easy, but yeah. So I'd say learned a big lesson there through a tough market, and hope to not replicate that again.
What would you say are, and I am going somewhere with this, I promise, but what
Okay,
would you say
sure.
are your three personal values, if you will, kind of as it sounds like a bit of a cheesy question, but as a mining CEO, what are your
Sure.
unwavering values, if you will?
I think probably the main one is honesty, right? Like, especially as a junior explorer, there's so many just total bullshit artists out there, right? I mean, there's maybe 3,000 juniors in the space, right? Half of them are stretching the truth, you could say, at the very least, right? On what they're hoping to achieve with shareholder capital. I've just always tried to be really, really straightforward with my shareholders, try to message really clearly, both the upside and the risk of what we're trying to do. And we're one of the riskiest plays out there, right? We're early stage exploration. We don't pick up historic resources and try to turn 300,000 ounces into 500 and sell it for a profit, right? We're trying to find significant large discoveries, and they're obviously not easy to make. So always trying to be honest with shareholders, and then just honestly just hard work. Like our team is a really small team. My guys work really, really, really hard. And I try to kind of mirror that, I think, at the C-suite level as well. So honesty, hard work. I don't even know what the third one is, man. You kind of caught me on the not ready for that question, but maybe I'll come up with something here, and while we're talking, I'll just blurt it out, cut you off.
Talking about historic, cut me off as much as you want. I do that a lot as well, so I enjoy it. But talking about historic resources, I think the way you're supposed to do it is find something and just re-drill the historic holes, get it public, and then sell all. I think that's how it's supposed to be done. And maybe you've got that wrong.
That's the bull market playbook right there. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's okay. Honesty, hard work, and hard work at the third place as well. That's good enough for me.
Yeah,
obviously, good values. But life isn't perfect, and I've been cliche enough already today. So if I don't borrow from my own one-liners, I'll keep giving them. But I mean, you cannot have life is not perfect in a sense of you cannot have unwavering values. Like you can aspire to live by these, right? But somewhere you might have to compromise your values. Has that happened for you so far? Like, was there something where you had preferred not to do, but you did it because that was kind of the only option, if that makes sense?
Actually, no, I actually haven't. Probably to a fault. I think when I first started the company, I had a very narrow and naive view of how I was going to operate Ridgeline, I think, and how I was going to raise cash and all that. And maybe to a fault, I didn't, at certain times I wouldn't compromise on the pricing of a share of a placement that we were doing, right? Even though maybe it was to bring in at the time, maybe that I didn't know, like a really good shareholder, but they wanted to see a certain pricing or a warrant. Like I did no warrants in the first, as a private company, no warrants or anything, and was stuck really hard to that. But no, yeah, probably maybe to my own detriment, probably at times was a little too stubborn. Didn't I like to think that I'd never actually compromised any serious core values for me while building the company, which I'm proud of. But I wouldn't mind making the shareholders a little bit of money as well, right? So I'm trying to find that balance of making sure I grow the company the right way, and also make sure I don't miss out on opportunities for our shareholders. So
is that the most stressful part of the job for you, like raising capital? If you mentioned you're bringing it up a couple of times, I'm noticing, is that what's stressing you out the most?
I think for all juniors, it's probably one of the main thing that we CEOs keep us up at night, right? Like I have no concerns about the geology, right? Like our team's great. I believe in our projects. I think the fact that we're having multiple majors do deals with us on our projects, shows that we're doing good work at that level, right? So that stuff doesn't keep me up at night. Either a discovery's there, it's not, and we're doing it as cheaply and efficiently as we can. But definitely on the capital market side, I mean, there's a million ways to finance and grow a company, whether it be through, straight just making a discovery, mergers. And we've looked through all of those opportunities in the past. And yeah, it's definitely the main thing that keeps me up.
What's hard about financing? I mean, explain it to me like I'm five. I haven't done financings, and
Sure.
and it doesn't look too hard to me. Maybe from my desktop perspective, and the only thing I can do as a retail investor is complain when my company does a capital raise for diluting me. But yeah, what's hard? What's hard about financing?
Yeah, when you're like a junior like us, where you don't have a resource, you don't have maybe a flagship asset that you can hang your hat on or throw some economic studies on. Really what you're doing is you're selling yourself, right? You're going to shareholders and saying, hey, I alone can do better than the 100 other guys that I'm competing for capital with, right? And here's why. So every single time you pitch an investor, right, it feels a little bit like they're judge it really, whether they decide to invest or not is a very personal thing, right? For us, right? Like for me, if someone says, sorry, I'm not really into it, they don't believe that, the story that I'm telling of, hey, I think I can deliver this and my team can do this, they don't believe that, right? Or, it's not a good enough story. So it feels very personal still, kind of thing when you're pitching the company. And so yeah, that's definitely a stressful part of financings for sure. It's more than just, can I raise 3 or can I raise $4 million? It's a lot more than that, right? Are these shareholders continuing to trust you, right? And I've had core shareholders over the years, that guys that wrote checks for the first 3-4 financings, that have suddenly fallen off and they're not writing checks anymore, right? And that feels pretty personal because obviously they're not writing checks because they feel that they're not going to make money off you, right? So or they feel like the opportunity maybe slipped away. So every time that happens, it certainly hurts.
I don't think it's like, and I'm approaching it from the perspective of someone who, although small checks, I do write checks into financings here and there. Sometimes it's just the market. I don't think
For
you should
sure.
take it personal at all. I mean, it's
Yeah.
maybe just, yeah.
It's not certainly, like, it's not like I used to take it a lot harder than I do now, right? Like, our business model, our jurisdiction, maybe, any number of things can play into the markets, can play into someone's decision. But it still is very much especially with the core group of shareholders, right? There's, I got about 10 guys that I call on every financing first before I call anyone else and say, hey, here's the terms, here's what we're doing, kind of thing. And every time luckily they've mostly all said yes. And so it's kind of a big sigh of relief. Okay, must be doing something right. But yeah, it's still a very personal thing, right? Because you're selling your own vision for the company, right? And some people don't buy it.
Well, it can't be too hard if you have majors spending what, 30 million bucks on your projects?
40.
40.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now you're showing off.
Yeah.
What about
Go ahead.
$10 million matters. No, I get that
Yep.
part. What about online abuse? I mean, I kind of reminded myself of when I said complaining about a financing, like that happens all the time. Like the billboards explode when you do a financing. They complain about it. It's well, oftentimes for a good reason too.
Yeah.
I don't think you personally get a whole lot of that, but the cycle is young, so give it time.
Sure.
But
there'll come a time. Yes.
Pushback from investors, being in the spotlight, getting critique is definitely part of every CEO's job. That's a main part, if you will. How do you handle it?
I think it comes back to kind of that honesty part, right? Like I've always been pretty honest about messaging expectations and trying to set proper expectations to shareholders. So luckily, I feel like whenever we've raised cash, done a major deal, it's always been fairly well received because for months in advance, I'm trying to properly message, okay, here's the next steps for the company. So there's never been any like real surprises, I don't think, in the company. And I think that's the big thing. Shareholders just don't like to be surprised to the to the negative anyways, right? They don't mind a positive surprise. But so that's been a big part of it, is just properly messaging the stories. And yeah, I've been lucky. I haven't had any serious haters yet in the Twitter or stuff, but it's really easy for folks to kind of sit back and critique a company's strategy or online. Typically I don't run into those same people at a conference, because it's a heck of a lot harder to go up to someone at a conference and say, hey, you're an idiot and here's why, versus behind a desktop, kind of thing. So you're always going to get kind of trolls and stuff like that will kind of crap on whatever you do no matter what. But I think we've had a fairly strong following.
Have you had that? Has someone walking up to you at a conference, walked up to you and said like, "Oh, Chad, you're doing all the wrong things"?
Yeah, I've had a couple. Yeah, and
really?
I try to. Yeah, sure. I mean, everybody's got a different view of how the company should grow, right? So for every person that loves that, hey, we got $40 million of spending across 2 projects with Nevada Gold Mines, there's also folks that go, you just gave away all the upside on your projects, right? They're now majority owners, and you just kind of gave away my upside as a shareholder. And my response was, well, look, the upside was essentially zero if we continued down this path, right? Because we weren't able to finance and drill, for example, at Swift, 1,000-meter drill holes. Each drill hole is $750,000 US. That's $1 million, roughly Canadian, a little over $1 million Canadian every single drill hole, right? So, I'm the largest shareholder in the company. I try to run it like a business, and for us, I'd rather own 25% of something huge or 100% than 100% of nothing, right? So that's kind
Yes.
of the approach we've always taken is, advance the projects as far as we possibly can without completely breaking the company structure. And then if the right deal comes along, then we find a partner.
I agree. I am for asset level dilution when it makes sense. Doesn't always make sense. Sometimes there's shenanigans with that too. Not
Yeah,
obviously not in your case, but
yeah,
yeah.
no deal's perfect. But like the other thing, I think there's a major disconnect between discovery and the run that can come in a, like the excitement and the returns that can come from a discovery on a stock is phenomenal, right? But to take a stock actually, or to take a project from discovery all the way to production, at the end of the day, massive dilution is coming to that junior, right? Whether it's at the corporate level or at the project level, it does not matter. The dilution is coming, right? So then I think what you have to decide is how much risk am I willing to accept, right? Am I willing to accept that corporate dilution and try to take this all the way? If it's the right project, that has, the ounces and the economics behind it, then it makes sense potentially to do that, right? I mean, Great Bear did that and huge win. But there's a lot of hurdles to get over, I think, in that first kind of 5 to 7 years of a discovery. And, if you think that, the markets aren't going to support the drilling of a project, if it's not like a tier 1 discovery, for example, you still might not get a lot of support for drilling that, right? And that might be the right time to bring a partner on, dilute at the project level, reduce your risk, and still keep a meaningful stake. So that's kind of the trade-off that we look at every project.
I suppose it's also kind of the nature of the beast when you get pushback on that, because people typically get in junior mining for a all or nothing kind of approach, like go big or go home.
Right.
So I can see the mentality being different, and I see headbutting in some of these companies that I interview where it's a real exploration business versus a promote. When someone says, "Oh, I'm going to do the right thing for the company," might not be the right thing for the share price over the next 6 months, but it's the right thing for the company and the right thing for the business long term, like you've done with this, asset level. That's your strategy as well,
Yeah.
just overall for the company. But there's headbutting in that. I mean, that's where the critique comes in from people expecting, an all or nothing type of approach, but the risk they're taking maybe also justifiably so.
Well, and the thing is if for example at Swift with our South 30 with Nevada Gold Mines deal, if we had optioned the project and then the first hole they drilled turned out to be a massive discovery, I kind of got mud on my face, right? It's like that then you look at that and you go, no, that wasn't a good deal. I did give away the upside, and I can tell you, like, I wanted them to make it. I still believe they're going to make a discovery at Swift. But I was pretty nervous, with that first drill program, because I thought, man, if they drill the first hole and it hits, I look like an asshole, right? Kind of thing. So, there's always that risk, right? Like you can end up making the wrong decision, and I'm, jury's still out whether the way that we're advancing our assets through some of them being 100% and some of them being deals, I think the company for us to grow as a business, but we'll see if it delivers something that actually matters to shareholders here. We got lots of drilling being done this year.
Sounds like you also have thicker skin than I do, because it's some of these things are hurtful. I get hurtful comments here, there, people making fun of the color of my hair, which I don't take it too hard too much. No, I'm just kidding. And I suppose it really only hurts if it's true, and most of the times it really isn't. But sometimes it is. I mean, sometimes it is, or it will be. Something will hit that insecure spot of yours. Well,
Sure.
what's that for you actually? What's something you're insecure about?
Probably just like how I'd say really comes down to how the company has evolved over the last few years, right? We started out as a pure explorer, just 100% owned projects, funding all of our own exploration. And that didn't work out, right? Like we didn't make a big enough discovery for it to matter to shareholders, right? The Selena CRD project, our discovery there, I think that's a pretty significant discovery, but it requires a lot more drilling still, right? And we haven't been able to get the market support, I guess, to go out and raise cash and really get aggressive with it. So yeah, I mean, a definite trigger is certainly just around how we've built the business and how it's evolved, and whether we're throwing away the upside, like a few folks have said. I'd strongly believe the other way, but and the reason I believe so is because we have those carried interests, right? So we may be minority owners in these deals, but if they hit all their milestones, but at the end of the day, a 25% non-dilutive financing option for us to participate in the building of a mine, that's huge, right? Like mines can be easily $1 billion to build, and that would be $200 million that we'd have to put up to fund our pro rata, or 250 million, sorry. We don't have to worry about that, right? At any of those deals. If it goes to production, we've built a non-dilutive path to being an actual miner, or we can sell our stake, right? And someone else will find that very valuable. But so I think we're doing the right things. But yeah, there's always folks that have their opinions and they're valid. They're shareholders, right? If it's a shareholder, I've had a few times where I've had a path that I was taking with the company, and I talked to some key shareholders, and they were strongly advised against certain aspects of maybe something I was doing, and I took it seriously and actually shifted the focus, and I think it was the right call. So there's issue, times like that where folks have comments, and it actually was the right course, was to actually adjust and change the way I was moving things forward.
Yeah, well, 25% of a steak is always better than 100% of a cucumber, if you ask me. So hopefully you're right on that one.
That's the approach, yeah.
What is, and that would be success, right? I would consider that a big success if that gets built, if it gets to that point where it gets built.
Yeah.
What do you think success looks like for your career as a whole, though? I mean, you're young, you're hang on, what are you, 38?
37.
38,
yeah,
37.
Almost 38. Yeah.
Okay, when's your birthday?
November.
Okay, what do you consider, you're 37, you're gonna be 38. What would you consider, like, Ridgeline is hopefully not going to be your only venture, but what would you consider success if you're 85 and you look back at your career? What does success look like to you?
Sure. Yeah, no, like when I first started Ridgeline, my version of success was what Great Bear did, right? Was like, oh, we're just going to sell our company for $1.5 billion after making a big discovery. It's no problem. It's going to be easy, right? And I think what I've kind of come to realize is, I'm hopefully going to be in the business for a lot longer still, and this probably isn't going to be my last venture. And so what I'm really focusing on is we've raised over $20 million life of company, and a core group of folks have always been involved right from the start. And I just want to return, even if it's a small win, to shareholders, right? Like it doesn't have to be $1 billion takeout, right? But if I can make every shareholder who's invested in Ridgeline some cash, and in the with that happening, it means I make a little bit of cash too. That would be great, right? I'd like to have a small win that I can kind of say, look, investing in deals that we're doing, we will find a way to make you some money, and that's the hope. Is we can build on that. Hopefully, Ridgeline, I'm able to monetize it in some way over the next couple of years is the whole goal. That's why we've put these deals in place, and then we also have our Big Blue project in Salina, which I'm really excited about. Both those projects have great exploration potential. So whether it be 100% discovery or a partner discovery, I think it'd be a nice win for us, and I'd like to return some of that cash back to the shareholders.
Where do you see yourself after that? Because this is, yeah.
Honestly, I don't know. That's the main thing. I want to just focus on making Ridgeline a success right now. And I think if we do have a small or even a decent little win for the company, there'll be opportunities to come after that. And I don't really know what that looks like, but I'd like to continue being in the space and be a guy that folks invest in because they think, that we're actually going to make money for them. So
are you going to balance continue being in the space with your personal life? So achieving that success, especially given that you have kids now, but they're going to be grown potentially, or that's at least what my parents tell me, sooner than you think they're going to be. So, yep. I mean, they're going to grow up quicker than you expect them to. So how are you going to manage personal life and achieving that success?
I think I've found a decent, anyone that says that there's like a balance is full of it, right? Like there's never, if you're trying to run a junior miner or any startup, I think for that matter, there's no such thing as like work-life balance, but I have found a good way of trying to not let the stress of the markets and a lot of the things that are completely out of my control. I don't let those get to me as bad anymore. And I just try to focus on things that, our technical team can deliver on. And if our technical team is delivering, then that means I can then go out to, corporates or the markets and try to, actually make some improvements for the company. Right. So, I think that try to make sure that I stay active with the kids, skiing, hockey, coaching, all that kind of stuff, and try to, luckily being working from home in this role, I don't have an office or anything, right? I'm in my kitchen right now. It gives enough flexibility that, I can get up early, work all day, take my kids to hockey practice, or pick them up from school, and still be pretty regular part of their lives. So it's great. Yeah.
Well, hopefully Carlo's getting date nights in between too, though.
Yeah, we lost our good babysitter, so we're working on finding a new one. She was really selfish and went off to school. So yeah, it was terrible.
That woman, women these days, right?
I know.
Wanting education and stuff. Do you still have time to invest your own money, like, on the exchange, like the rest of us plebs?
No, no, I gave up on that a while back. Like the tough thing about, I think the difference, if I'd have worked my whole career and, started up a junior at 55 years old, I would have had a lot more cash to work with, right? I would have been able to invest more heavily in my own deals, as well as deals of friends and stuff like that. I tried to do that early in the company, and spread myself too thin. So I invest in Ridgeline. I invest in Scout Discovery Corp, which I'm a director in. And Carla and I actually founded a drilling company with a few partners in 2023, which the goal of that is to service both Ridgeline at a discount to market price for drilling, and then also be a third-party drill provider for other companies. So between those, I guess you could say three cost centers, there's not a lot of leftover money. So I've been watching kind of from the outside looking in. I tried to buy Philo after their discovery hole, and I chased the stock all day. And about 2021, I guess, when they drilled that discovery hole, I chased the stock like the entire day, probably put in 10 bids, kept on chasing it, and then said, oh, it's overbought, it'll come back down. And it like quadrupled within 5 more days or something like that. So that was my last kind of big purchase for stock, or attempt to purchase stock. So, and that would have been a good one.
See, it's pretty much the same thing happened to me. Only I didn't even chase it. I was like, oh, these people don't know what they're doing. They're buying this stock too expensive, and then it 5x right after this. So it happens more to me. But see, you're doing it wrong again, Chad. You're supposed to start a drilling company and charge twice the market price. That's how you make money in this space.
Well, yeah, that was supposed to, that would have been a lot smarter, but I keep on going back to the honesty thing, right? I'm trying, like, the issue became is drilling has become very, very expensive in Nevada, like outrageous. It's more than, I think, easily more than doubled in price since I came here in 2013, probably even more, like 2.5x the cost. Wow. Using the same drill rigs. The technology hasn't changed at all, but the cost of running a drill company now that I own one is really, really high, right? And so the idea is Ridgeline is my largest position. I need to find a way to get more holes in the ground for less, so that my actual real largest investment, being Ridgeline, will actually take off, right? So that was the genesis for starting the drill company. And we'll drill for a discount for Ridgeline when Ridgeline's drilling, and then the rest of the time I have enough connections in Nevada that we've been able to keep the drill busy and kind of just charge it out at fair market value, and it's working out.
I think I asked you this in Florida when I saw you, but what percentage of your net worth would you guess your position in Ridgeline is?
At this stage, I'd say probably at least 75%, 80%. Yeah.
So the drilling company, where I'm going with this is basically trying to understand how are you going to manage that? I mean, I joke about you charging 2 times market price, but it happens in Canadian capital markets. I'm not saying you're going to do it, but there's helicopter or camp providers or whatever, and then they charge their own companies twice. So it's basically just a vehicle for them to get shareholders' money into their own pockets. Sure. How are you going to ensure that never happens to you outside of your own personal values?
Yeah.
How do you manage that?
We were pretty open about our disclosure in our financials when Diamondback, the name of the company, did drill for Ridgeline in 2023, and we were able to show that we were able to drill for a significant discount to the past 4 years average price that we paid to third-party providers. So laid that all out there, pretty much what our cost per foot was for every drill program we'd done since 2019. And then compared that against what the cost per foot was through Diamondback, and it was a pretty material discount. So I felt pretty open about that and comfortable with with doing that. And if shareholder, for my response, was kind of like, okay, if a shareholder feels there's a conflict of interest, absolutely, right? That's why we file a related party filing, right? We're very open about, and at the end of the day, it's all in the best interest of myself and Ridgeline shareholders, right? Being my largest net worth position, the drilling company certainly is not my largest focus, right? It's still Ridgeline Minerals. We have a president for the drilling company. I'm just my wife and I, Carla, we're just shareholders, right, in the drilling company. So that's being run by other folks, and that allows me to focus on Ridgeline.
How do you manage to give it a discount to market? I mean, how can you give it more? How can you give these services cheaper than what other service providers can give you?
Sure. Yeah. No, it really came down to a couple of my other silent partners are also shareholders in Ridgeline, right? So they feel motivated to also the same motivation to see Ridgeline be successful. The other thing is in the early days of the company, there's always kind of like a startup phase for a company, right? You're getting crews, your equipment breaks down, all that kind of stuff. And the early days of starting up was under Ridgeline, right? Doing a Ridgeline drill program. We were able to do it cheaper, but it did take a heck of a lot longer, right? Because we had a lot of breakdowns and a lot of, personnel issues and getting everything ironed out. So what Ridgeline did was give Diamondback the opportunity to get up and off the ground, work out the kinks, and become an actual, put on our big boy pants, become a real company, I guess is the easiest way to say it. Ridgeline still benefited from a cost perspective. But, so Diamondback, we feel like we owe a little allegiance to Ridgeline. Whenever we're working doing drill programs in the future, there's going to be a discount involved.
Okay, but then your normal other clients of Diamondback, they get a different pricing, and then how does that work?
We offer them, we bid out just like we bid, we'll bid against 4 or 5 other drill companies, and if our contract comes out on top, then we get the bid, right? Okay. So there's no hard feelings with any other companies, with them seeing Ridgeline get a discount, they get it. We're I'm an owner of Ridgeline and an owner of Diamondback, so it's not a big deal.
Fascinating. It's a fascinating business. I'm sorry if I'm overstepping. I'm just curious about that business because there's not many. I don't even know if there's public companies that are drillers because they're typically well cash flowing. They have big balance sheets. They don't need outside capital. So it's fascinating business.
Yeah, it's a soul sucking one too. It's tough. It's tough starting a drill company, right? I thought working with drilling companies for 15 years made me, somewhat an expert in the space. And I was sadly mistaken, right? Like understanding really how drilling companies run and the struggles that you go through, that a lot of time don't even get passed on to the client, right? The client isn't even aware of costs or, a lot of things that come up. So it was a tough year getting it up and off the ground, but it's self-sustaining and doesn't take up much of my time. And it's nice to know that I got great crews and a good price if I ever need the drill for Ridgeline. So
when I was 23, I'd been going to restaurants for about a decade actively, and I thought it was easy starting a restaurant too. And so that's when wife and I started our first breakfast place, and it was anything but easy. And you trick yourself that way, but I mean, it's good that it's working out for you. Hospitality business has worked out for us as well. We are about to exit it, by the way. But anyways, not talking about me. I like it. I like Chad Peters After Dark. I love it. It's been great. I'll let you do your thing now. I'm sure you have better things to do than talk to me, but not before the lightning round, which I didn't tell you about because I wanted you to be unprepared and raw for it. So I have a few, basically 10 multiple choice questions, and you get, I don't know, 2 seconds to answer each one of those. You ready for that?
Oh man, not at all, but okay, let's do it.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Mountains or beach?
Beach.
Football or hockey?
Hockey.
Books or movies?
Books.
Early bird or night owl?
Early bird.
Beer or wine?
Oh, depends on the day, but I'm going to go with beer.
Adventure travel or luxury resort?
Luxury resort. I do enough logistics with my job day to day. I want to sit on a beach.
So you're going to say a tent?
Nope, not at all. I spent a lifetime in a tent. I'm done.
Steak or burger?
Oh, steak.
I was going to ask steak or cucumber, befitting my other, but that's too easy.
Yeah, that's an easy one.
There it is. I told you I'm going to ask you this. Dogs or cats?
Oh, dogs.
Okay.
Yeah, Gary,
well, you had
Gary
a cat.
was wonderful, but yeah, no, I know, and never again. Yeah. Yeah.
Cats are evil. Geophysics or geochem?
Geochem.
Okay. And then lastly, Toronto or Vancouver? Where would you settle if you could only pick one place for the rest of your life?
Oh, Vancouver. Yeah, you get mountains and beach.
Well, fair point. Fair point.
Yeah.
Bonus one. That was actually the 10th one. I'll give you 11 one. What kind of car do you drive?
I drive a Ford F-250. Yeah, nothing too fancy. Work truck.
Good. That's it. I don't have anything else. This has been very fun. What am I forgetting to ask you? What do you think the world should know about Chat After Dark?
Yeah, and I think we covered it pretty good. I'm probably gonna have a beer tonight, I think. So
All right, Chad. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate your time.
all right, bud, you too.